Nearly 5,000 years ago, humanity was brought to its knees by Erebus, a being known as the origin of all evil. In a desperate effort to liberate the world from darkness, 4 extraordinary heroes united in battle. Each of them eventually perished, save for one, Kyle, the last champion who remained steadfast on humanity's side. Fueled by the sacrifice of his comrades, Kyle triumphed over Erebus and saved mankind from annihilation. But millennia passed, and the truth was rewritten. The official history spoke only of a grand, nameless sacrifice that vanquished the root of evil, now remembered as Erebus. Kyle's name was nowhere to be found. For thousands of years, no one questioned the official account. That is, until Kyle returned, reborn into the present age. Kyle uncovered the distorted tale of Erebus's defeat and discovered his complete erasure from the annals of history. Confronted with this betrayal of memory, he resolved to reclaim his legacy. His journey began with enrollment in Lumarine Academy, the prestigious institution that safeguarded the hero record. There, among future legends and fabricated truths, Kyle set out to recover his rightful place in a world that had forgotten him. Years passed since Kyle's quiet rebirth, and now life stirred within the Delin Royal School. In a sunlit classroom, the teacher addressed his students with palpable excitement, reminding them of their era, the Age of Heroes. 5 millennia had slipped by since the emergence of the hero record, and the lower world had transformed dramatically in its wake. This year, the Royal School of Delin was chosen to host the Lumarine Academy entrance exam, a rare honor. The teacher brimmed with hope, certain that some among his students would succeed and etch their names into the hero record. He urged them to pay close attention. Not everyone shared his enthusiasm. At the back of the room, one student leaned against his desk, eyes closed in disinterest. That was Leo Plove, 15 years old, heir to a noble house. The teacher, annoyed, assumed Leo already knew the material and longed for greater challenges. So he tested him, demanding an explanation of the ancient ritual that once granted the hero title. Leo rose lazily and replied with indifference. To him, fame alone was enough. People would worship anyone who stood out. His answer disappointed the teacher, who then invited others to respond. One of the top students, Gulliver of Tradon, eagerly provided a detailed explanation. In ancient times, divine favor was not easily won. Heroes were chosen through sacred rites, and the most notable among them was the blood ritual. The teacher nodded, already envisioning Gulliver's rise as a future magical prodigy. Meanwhile, Leo tuned out. He considered these lessons trivial. Encounters with gods, he mused, had once been routine. The gods had granted the lower world a miracle to honor the heroes who fought Erebus, an eternal record of valor. Yet Leo found no mention of himself in any account. The silence around his deeds disturbed him. Excitement swept through the class as students pressed against the windows. The Zerdinger clan passed through the hallway, led by Celia, whose presence sparked whispers. A broadcast summoned all students to the auditorium for the Zerdinger's visit. As Leo headed out, Gulliver called after him, questioning whether he planned to catch Celia's eye. Leo barely reacted, uninterested in the spectacle. Gulliver pretended indifference too, but his gaze lingered on Celia with a mix of rivalry and longing. Later, Leo trained alone in the practice hall, sweat dripping from his relentless swings. After sheathing his training stick, he picked up a real sword and made for the exit. Outside, a woman charged at him like a thunderbolt. He blocked her effortlessly. They had fought before. This sparring session was no surprise. She was his mother, a relentless warrior in his final test before Lumarine Academy. Her strikes came fast, each one sharper than the last. Leo matched her blow for blow, his technique refined and precise. Eventually, his momentum shifted the duel. His mother yielded, breathless and astonished by his progress. She rose slowly and asked, with unexpected gentleness, why he was so determined to enter Lumarine Academy. Lumarine Academy stood at the pinnacle of hero institutions, one of the 4 elite schools tied to the hero record. For Leo, it represented more than prestige. It was the most promising place to uncover remnants of his former life as Kyle. His determination to enroll was unwavering. His mother, however, believed he should wait another year to prepare and have other plans. With the Zerdinger clan visiting the Plove mansion, she intended to speak with Guy Zerdinger, the clan's vice-patriarch, in hopes of convincing him to share the Zerdinger aura technique with Leo. She believed it would give him the strength he needed for next year's exam. What she didn't know was that Leo had no interest in waiting. At the Plove mansion, Celia Zerdinger stepped from her carriage and surveyed the home with subtle skepticism. She wondered aloud why her uncle had chosen to stay here instead of booking a hotel. At 15, Celia was known as the sword princess of her clan, fiercely focused on passing the Lumarine entrance exam. She doubted a house like the Plove estate would offer much to support her training. Her uncle Guise, amused, asked if she was curious to meet Leo, the boy who openly dismissed their clan. Celia remained indifferent. If Leo couldn't even wield aura yet, she saw no reason to be impressed. Guise, however, expressed quiet optimism about Leo's potential. Inside the mansion, Guise greeted the family heads, Dade Plove and his wife Reina. Courtesies were exchanged, and Guise introduced Celia, who returned their hospitality with a respectful nod. Reina studied the girl, noting the strong family resemblance. Celia quickly realized Reina was her aunt, part of the Zerdinger bloodline. Later, Guise and Reina caught up. Guise mentioned visiting the Royal School of Delin to meet Leo, only to find him already gone. Reina apologized, admitting her son's aloofness could be mistaken for rudeness. Curious, Guise asked about Leo's character. Reina described him as immensely gifted, not out of maternal bias but from conviction. Guise listened with interest, contemplating whether Leo was truly fit to inherit the Zerdinger flame technique. He trusted his sister's judgment but insisted on seeing Leo's strength for himself. Meanwhile, Leo meditated in solitude. Having completed a minor ritual, he declared his vessel ready to contain the powers he needed. He had delayed learning aura technique intentionally. His body's unique structure meant that embracing aura technique too soon would cause it to dominate his essence, limiting his ability to absorb mana and soul energy. In his past life, he had seen firsthand how unchecked power led to ruin. He had no intention of repeating those mistakes. This time, he sought complete control, and mastering aura on his own terms was step one. But before he could go deeper, a voice interrupted. Celia stood before him, smirking with confidence. She noted his basic grasp of training and offered to teach him swordsmanship. Leo, unaware of her identity, responded directly. Though flattered, he refused to learn from someone he deemed inferior in technique. Celia bristled at the remark, interpreting it as a challenge. Leo clarified that in a fight to the death, she might win since he lacked aura. However, in pure swordplay, he believed he had the upper hand. Provoked, Celia seized a nearby sword, determined to prove him wrong. If she won, he would serve as her attendant. If he won, she would serve him. Leo accepted without hesitation. Their duel began. Leo moved first, delivering a lightning-quick strike that Celia dodged with ease. She was impressed by his speed but unconvinced of his overall strength. Their blades clashed again. This time, Leo unleashed a powerful blow, forcing her to retreat. His sword shattered on impact with the ground, yet he didn't stop. He pressed forward, overwhelming her. Celia, realizing she couldn't block the attack, instinctively activated her aura armor. Though its use was forbidden in the duel, she claimed it was a reflex. Leo, undeterred, declared victory. Still unwilling to concede, Celia braced for more. Leo responded by removing the magical weights he'd worn to suppress his strength. His next strike obliterated her aura barrier entirely. Stunned and shaken, Celia could no longer deny his power. Later, in the courtyard, Leo encountered his mother, who introduced him to his uncle, Guise, and respectful greetings were exchanged. Reina then asked if he had met Celia yet. Leo recalled her fainting after their duel, possibly due to the strain of aura use. Before he could explain, a knight approached with news for Guise. Guise was intrigued to hear that Leo had defeated Celia despite lacking aura. He praised Leo's extraordinary talent, though Leo attributed his victory to Celia's underestimation. When Guise asked about the terms of their wager, Leo explained that Celia was now his maid for the week. Guise, though uncomfortable, agreed that a deal must be honored. However, he reminded Leo of Celia's noble status and offered a greater reward if he dropped the bet. Leo declined. For him, it was a matter of principle. Celia bore the Zerdinger name and must uphold her promise. Guise then asked if Leo was willing to reject the Zerdinger aura technique over this. Without hesitation, Leo replied that any technique offered only to protect someone's pride wasn't worth learning. Seeing no alternative, Guise pressed Leo further, pointing out that he had essentially called the Zerdinger heir his servant and dismissed their revered aura technique. Leo remained calm, unshaken by consequences, and acknowledged his uncle's summary as accurate. In response, Guise's demeanor shifted, his tone softening as he asked whether Leo found the statement rude. Leo clarified that he never intended disrespect. Had the aura method been offered as a reward for besting Celia, he would have accepted it. But as a bribe to nullify her loss, it held no value. To deny her defeat would imply she was stronger but slipped by chance, an idea Leo rejected. Even if she had given her all, he believed he still would have won. Reina, listening nearby, felt a surge of pride in her son. Her brother, Guise, grew more intrigued. Leo's principled refusal reinforced his character. Guise even voiced a wish that such a youth belonged to the Zerdinger clan. He then instructed his knights to escort Celia to the servants' quarters. Turning to Leo, he granted him permission to speak freely without formality. After this exchange, Leo departed. Guise then assured his sister he would persuade their elder brother to allow Leo to learn the phoenix breath technique. Later that day, back in Leo's room, Celia appeared visibly flustered. She awkwardly introduced herself as the maid assigned to him for a week. Leo found it amusing how the elegant aura she carried blended with her simple uniform. Her outfit seemed to sparkle, highlighting her beauty. Celia, annoyed, reminded him she was fully aware of her looks. Leo apologized, admitting the habit stemmed from an old friend known for excessive flattery. Their conversation shifted when Celia noticed the book Leo was reading. Titled The Great Hero of the Beginning, it was a childhood favorite. Celia remembered reading it at the age of 5. She pulled another book from his shelf, commenting on the abundance of literature about Kyle. Leo remarked that great feats are rarely the result of a single hero, they belong to teams across generations. Celia rejected this view, calling Kyle a fraud who stole credit from true heroes, an opinion shared by many. Leo, unhappy with that sentiment, dropped the topic and declared it time for breakfast and training. As he prepared, Celia asked, with courteous composure hiding quiet resentment, if she could join the session. Leo led her to the training hall without hesitation. Soon, Celia was kneeling, breathless after a sparring round. Leo calmly pointed out a flaw in her techniques, causing her stamina to drop and her defenses weakened. She questioned the value of such intensity, but Leo argued that the modern generation neglected physical training despite its benefits for aura. Not wanting to appear fragile, Celia pushed herself up for another round. She charged, shouting not to underestimate her, only for Leo to effortlessly deflect her, sending her sprawling. Frustration mounted. Leo then presented her with a bracelet, which she grabbed eagerly, unaware it contained weight magic and was immensely heavy. He smirked, knowing it would now be part of her daily training. The next day, Guise observed their sparring. Watching Celia struggle, he noted that humility would serve her well before the Lumarine exam. He called Leo over and shared that he was considering speaking to the Patriarch about teaching Leo the Phoenix Breath, the clan's foundational aura art. Leo was startled. The technique was only passed to those accepted into the Zerdinger lineage. Celia doubted her father would agree to it, but Guise had a plan. If Leo passed the Lumarine entrance exam, he would be granted the right to learn the art. Celia objected, concerned about the danger. The exam included real battles, and Leo lacked aura. But Leo calmly admitted his lack of combat experience, at least in this life. When asked, he accepted the condition, provided his parents agreed. A week later, the exam day arrived. Among the crowd, Celia stood out, drawing attention. She teased Leo about being nervous, still calling him master, her maid role having lingered beyond its term. Their moment was interrupted by a loud voice, Gulliver Traden. He had come to greet Celia but was surprised to see Leo. Believing Leo unfit for the trial due to his lack of aura, he greeted Celia politely. She ignored him. When he tried to jog her memory, Celia dismissed him entirely and took Leo's hand, walking away. Then another voice called out. 2 siblings appeared, Abad, 16, and Chelsea, 14, members of the esteemed Llewellyn house. Celia recognized them instantly, but Leo did not. She explained that they hailed from a legendary hero family and warned Leo that their presence meant the competition had intensified. Losing was not an option. Celia refused to let the Zerdingers fall behind the Llewellyn. Leo of the Plo family, however, showed little interest in this rivalry. When they greeted Celia, she returned their greeting politely, having no reason to decline. She also introduced Leo, a noble from the Plove line in the kingdom of Delrod. Upon hearing that Leo bore no grand title, Abad dismissed him as irrelevant and turned away with Chelsea, boasting that they would surely take first place. Celia clearly harbored disdain for the Llewellyn siblings and silently vowed to outperform them in the upcoming tests. Suddenly, an official from Lumarine Academy appeared on stage, commanding attention. He introduced himself as Professor Albie Giron, a name that left Celia stunned. Leo remained unfazed, unaware of the professor's reputation. Irritated, Celia explained that Giron's name appeared in the Hero Record, a prestigious ledger of modern legends. As Leo observed him, he noticed a swirl of massive mana within the professor's left eye. Giron began outlining the entrance exam, traditionally split into duels and monster hunts conducted in turns. Finding that format dull, he dramatically torched the instructions and abandoned the conventional structure. From a thick, ancient tome, he summoned the prologue of the first chapter, The Forest of Monsters. A glowing magic circle flared beneath the student's feet. Without delay, the entire group was transported into a new realm. This world, taken from the hero record, preserved the memories and experiences of past champions. Inside, the students would inherit a hero's challenges and potentially their abilities. The new goal was simple: survive. They could ally or fight as they pleased. Anyone who wished to quit could break the crystal orb they had been given. Leo immediately recognized the terrain, once an elven woodland, now cursed by the witch queen Silotuna. While some dismissed the setting as an illusion, Leo disagreed. Even if born of memory, everything here felt real, and death would be no less final. An arrow suddenly struck the ground near Leo. Chelsea Llewellyn had mistaken him for a Zerdinger and prepared another attack. Leo clarified that he hailed from the Plove family. She grew suspicious, recalling his earlier presence with Celia. Without hesitation, she unleashed a spell called Wind Sickle, one Leo didn't recognize but quickly dissected. Her irritation grew as he remained calm. She launched another strike, this time a barrage of blades. Leo deflected them with a single sword swipe, her magic dissipating like mist. Shocked by his effortless defense, Chelsea questioned his power. He hadn't even used aura. Leo, unmoved, told her the attack was simply weak and proposed an alliance. Enraged, she declared herself a battle mage and attacked with all her might. But Leo had already moved, her strikes missing entirely. She sensed no mana, unable to predict his position. Suddenly, he appeared before her, fist raised. The blow's impact remained unseen, but her legs buckled. Leo offered his alliance once more. Afterward, he tied Chelsea to a tree, leaving his demeanor unreadable. As night fell, he lit a small fire that inched closer to her. Panic replaced defiance. She attempted wind magic but failed. Leo had sealed her abilities. He knew he couldn't hold the seal long, but it was enough. Eventually, she relented. He demanded more than words. She swore by the Llewellyn name to cooperate. Satisfied, Leo freed her, catching her just before she fell into the flames. Meanwhile, Professor Geron and the other staff remained unimpressed with most students. However, Celia and Abad showed promise. Also, Leo and Chelsea, being a team, caught the professor's attention. Though he found Leo's tactics childish, convincing Chelsea to cooperate earned him approval. Despite lacking Celia's grace or strength, Leo's capabilities placed him as an unexpected contender. As Leo and Chelsea moved deeper into the forest, she began to see value in their alliance. She asked about his aura. He replied that he had none. This revelation stunned her. Then, something rustled in the bushes. Chelsea reacted first, casting a spell too powerful for the weak creature they encountered. Leo complimented her strength but criticized her technique. Suddenly, Leo sensed danger. He halted her, noticing parched earth and decomposed corpses. Without warning, an explosion erupted, but Leo shielded them both. Gulliver and his gang emerged, clearly targeting him. One attacker rushed forward, only to be crushed by a single punch from Leo. Calmly, Leo asked Chelsea to cover him. She complied, impressed by his effortless rescues. Gulliver, true to form, fled, desperate to find reinforcements. Fate led him to Celia, who followed his trail. Upon reaching his destination, they discovered a grim scene: monster remains and fallen students. Reunited with her brother, Chelsea brightened. Celia, however, scoffed at Leo's alliance with her, unable to believe he had convinced Chelsea. Leo merely smirked, a dark edge in his expression. He then helped the fallen students, prompting Abad to question his motives. Leo explained the value of unity over senseless conflict. He pointed to the desiccated bodies, hinting at a greater danger. No monsters stirred nearby. They seemed to have fled in fear of something worse. Abad recalled Professor Geron's first legendary feat, slaying a powerful beast. A monstrous roar then echoed through the woods, confirming their fears. Meanwhile, Gulliver wandered alone, torch in hand, driven more by revenge than survival. He stumbled over a corpse and looked up to see a massive, spider-like creature. Panic gripped him as it crept closer. Back at the academy, 500 students had already failed. Only 50 remained, though the minimum selection target was 100. Professor Geron chose to accept only those who met his strict standards. He believed true heroes emerged in hardship and watched Leo's progress with growing interest. In the forest's darkness, Celia lit her blade and spotted something ahead: a spider feasting on a victim. Terror spread as Abad prepared a spell, but Leo stopped him. He suggested Gulliver break his crystal instead. Trapped in near death, Gulliver did so, triggering a surge of lightning that struck the spider's mouth. The trial was far from over. But the true test had only just begun. As the group prepared for combat, Abad launched his wind ping spell toward the looming monster. The spell tore through the air and struck true, but though it injured the creature, it failed to bring it down. Horror crept over their faces as they realized the true nature of their opponent, Talatunia, the Spider Queen, a monstrous entity born of darkness and blood. She was no ordinary beast. A reckless student charged, hoping that a physical blow might succeed where magic had faltered. He was promptly swatted aside, crumpling to the ground in a heap. Celia stepped up next, cloaked in arrogance, casting a red beam that pierced the creature's abdomen and seared it with agony. Yet, the spider's durability proved unmatched. The beam faded, the wounds closed, and Talatunia remained unbroken. Abad, cautious but determined, warned her that the path of a mage differed from that of a knight. He summoned a gust of wind to enhance his Raphael swordplay. Whirling into a deadly dance, Raphael struck repeatedly, yet his heart froze as Talatunia rose unscathed. Sensing his danger, Chelsea hurled her windbreaker spell, cushioning the impact of a retaliatory slash that grazed Abad. Despite Chelsea's quick aid, Abad was wounded. Though his arm remained intact, the pain reminded them how close they had come to ruin. Their attacks, no matter how forceful, were undone by the creature's rapid regeneration. Despair thickened as Talatunia advanced for the killing blow. Leo stepped forward while recognizing the Spider Queen's lineage. She's the daughter of Silatuna, former servant of Erebus, a beast who helped burn the elven forests. Leo remembered more. Professor Alby's left eye glowed with the mana of the Fairy King, and this spider had consumed one of the king's closest allies. In the past, Luna had sealed Talatunia with light and thunder, but the creature survived by devouring the elf who wore the Ring of Life, an artifact of limitless vitality. Abad, ever stubborn, insisted it was his responsibility to finish the exam, no matter the risk. He and Celia launched a volley of magical attacks, but the beast endured. Leo observed the futility of their effort. Their mana would vanish long before the creature fell. When Celia demanded a strategy, Leo urged cooperation. However, Abad refused. So did Celia. He forced clarity upon them. Without unity, they were doomed. At last, the message broke through. They would combine powers into a single decisive blow, but who would buy them time? Leo volunteered. Celia scoffed, reminding him he lacked aura. Leo admitted he could last only 5 minutes. Abad doubted even that would be enough. But Leo believed. He grabbed a discarded weapon and urged Chelsea to channel elemental magic through the blades. She conjured weapons for him, and he began his assault. In a flurry of slashes, he severed one of the spider's legs, stunning his companions. With precise strikes, he battered her hideous face. A distant memory stirred. An elven child, weeping in fear, caught in the spider's web. The child had screamed for his mother. Talatunia had come to devour him. Luna had appeared then, Lumarinius with rage, punishing the monster with light and thunder. Back in the present, Leo pressed the attack. He called out to Chelsea, requesting more weapons. She complied, crafting blade after blade. Even Abad was left in awe. Leo wielded each weapon with unmatched ferocity, though a claw finally scored his cheek. He refused to falter. Failure meant disgrace and death. Blades broke, but he endured. Then Celia completed her spell. Fire roared from her outstretched hand, engulfing the creature in a swirl of burning fury. At last, Talatunia shrieked, her form collapsing, and the ring of life dislodged from her body. The beast lay defeated. Celia fell to her knees, exhausted but relieved. She turned to thank Leo, but Chelsea spoke first, beaming with admiration. She called him a legend in the making and begged him to train her. Celia, half amused, encouraged the request, eager to see Chelsea endure Leo's harsh methods. Leo retrieved the Ring of Life. The fairy spirit within, Silrod, awakened upon hearing its name and acknowledged him as the new Fairy King. Their success, triggered by Professor Alby's discovery of the Mana Eye, marked the end of the exam phase. As the countdown ticked toward their return, Leo spotted someone from his past life. Far away, Headmaster Callion Biden reviewed the results from the Western region. Alby's standards had been brutal. Only 40 passed. He had expected 10. Celia and Abad had performed well, but Alby's chosen representative was not either of them. It was Leo Plove, a previously unknown name. Alby praised the boy as a hero-level talent. The exam ended, and Leo relaxed in the steam of a sauna. He had received the Fairy King Pact, something rare even among heroes. He did not understand why, until his mother appeared. She asked if he understood why she had been cast from her clan. Her power had surged uncontrollably in an attempt to save a comrade, and for that, she had been exiled. But she never regretted it. Now she stood before him, ready to guide his talent. The gates of Lumarine City opened and students gathered as they reached Lumarinier Academy. Leo's uncle appeared to greet him, explaining that the family had been embroiled in conflict over the Phoenix Breath inheritance. Though Leo's mother had severed ties, he was still her blood. The elders were impressed by his exam results. Leo received a subspace key. When he activated it and marked its pages with his blood, a secret book revealed itself. Though difficult to master, his uncle had faith in him. With that, he was welcomed into the clan. Celia soon called Leo to meet. On his way, he collided with a bespectacled girl who dropped her books. She apologized and hurried off. Her card read Chloe Muller, first-year student. Celia scolded him for being late. Leo explained his encounter with his uncle. Then, to answer her curiosity, he summoned the clan's blazing aura. Celia stood in awe. He had mastered the forbidden technique in less than a month. Later, a ship docked to carry them to Lumarine. Their knighthood class instructor, Aina Lendu, boarded with them. As the ship departed, the students relaxed. A young merchant, Thomas Carl, tried selling Leo and Celia goods. He mistaken them to be a couple, but Leo corrected his misunderstanding, introducing himself as a student from the kingdom of Delrod. Thomas was stunned, aware of the region's infamous exam difficulty. Suddenly, the ship shook violently. A monstrous tentacle rose from the sea, nearly crushing Thomas. The students panicked and begged for help. Their instructor sipped his wine, declaring it their trial to overcome. The kraken loomed above. Leo remained calm and cut through one of its limbs. Celia unleashed flames in a brilliant counterattack, though she was soaked by the monster's watery blast. Thomas was seized and screamed as the beast reeled him in. Celia and Leo surged forward while Thomas stared in disbelief, impressed not only by Celia but by Leo's equal ferocity. Another tentacle slammed down but was blocked by a frozen barrier. Chloe had returned, wielding ice magic, chastising the alchemist for being a hindrance. Thomas grumbled but tried to help regardless. More tentacles fell. Abad and Chelsea joined the fray, locked in their familiar rivalry. Despite this, Chelsea's eyes remained on Leo. Rival or not, she had found someone worth chasing. As monsters swarm the lake en route to the academy, their instructor views it as a perfect initiation for the incoming freshmen. Sipping wine, he muses over the top candidates: Chen Shaw, Celia, Abad, Chloe, Warraden Titan, and Dura Moira. Regional captains excel in the chaos, but one student stands apart. A nameless first year with no regional ties, his near-perfect swordplay and anticipatory movements suggest rare talent. The instructor eagerly awaits seeing his potential in class. Due to the battle, Thomas had exhausted his potion supply as they arrived. Disembarking, the instructor warns the freshmen that monster attacks will be routine. Afterwards, they head into the grand entrance hall of Lumarine Academy, where onlookers hope for an unforgettable performance. Then, the entrance ceremony began. The Night Division gathers as captains are summoned to the front. Headmaster Callion, equal parts fearsome and affectionate, urges students to risk their lives and surpass limits if they hope to become heroes. Slamming his fist down, he reminds them that failure to meet these standards means they do not belong. He then calls on the freshman representative and silence falls as he steps forward. It's not Celia, Chloe, or anyone expected. Only the name Leo Plove is cheered, surprising even him. Realizing the professor's hand in this, he steps up and addresses the crowd with visible tension. As rumors swirl about his identity, Leo is questioned about his ambitions. Sensing a challenge to the captains behind him, he boldly declares he's ready to accept any contender willing to challenge his student representative position. The teachers, expecting a quiet ceremony, are startled by his provocative stance. The contenders bristle, but Leo remains indifferent. With the ceremony concluded, they move to their dorms, set to begin a week of exploratory classes, an opportunity to sample various disciplines before selecting 3 core subjects. Leo is placed beside Thomas, who is eager for day one. After a quick good night, Leo lies in bed, pondering his purpose. He's here to uncover his lost hero record. At breakfast, Thomas joins Leo, who is soon approached by Duran, the Central Region's pride. Testing Leo's resolve, Duran demands to see if his public challenge was genuine. Leo casually sips his juice, unimpressed. Annoyed by Leo's indifference, Duran upends the table with a kick. Yet Leo, with impossible speed, reorganizes the spilled meal midair and reshapes his cheeseburger. Smirking, he jokes that good food shouldn't go to waste. Duran fumes, but their instructor interrupts, draping arms around them and reminding both of their title as student representative and regional captain. Any fighting today means punishment. Later, the night division gathers for class. Celia worries over Leo's tardy, breathless arrival, suspecting a fight. Their teacher, Aina, begins with the fundamentals and splits it into 3 forces: magic power, soul power, and aura, the hardest to control. Celia correctly notes aura alters mana's fluid nature to match the body. When asked about using aura, Leo explains it requires burning mana. Correct again, Alendu asks what's key in that process. Without hesitation, Leo answers that it's physical stamina. The instructor is impressed. Despite lacking formal training, Leo understands aura's essence. During the time for practice, Alendu creates an aura step platform using his legs and lifts into the air, explaining its vast applications. Students pair up to train. Celia playfully offers Leo help if he calls her sister. Leo declines, confident in his basics. Spotting Duran, Alendu decides it's time to address the cafeteria clash. Most students are unaware. Thomas piques Chelsea's interest with rumors. Leo and Duran are summoned. Asked what provoked him, Duran responds bluntly. Alendu proposes a solution race between representative and captain, both using unrestricted aura. On competition day, Thomas runs a betting pool. The crowd watches eagerly as Duran, lightning aura master of House Moira, prepares to face Leo, a dark horse with no noble ties. Murmurs ripple. Leo can't even perform a basic aura step. Many doubt he deserves the title. The moment arrives and instructor Alendu steps forward to announce the rules. The rules were simple. First to cross the finish line wins, and the loser must accept the outcome without protest. The contest was moments from starting, though even Celia harbored doubts about Leo's chances. Duran, cloaked in his signature lightning aura, was known for his explosive speed. Still, she hoped Leo might accomplish the impossible and overturn every assumption. At the instructor's call, the 2 racers launched into action. Duran was immediately wrapped in crackling energy, confident his lightning-powered sprint would leave Leo in the dust. He surged ahead with mechanical precision, while Leo, unaffected by pre-race jeers, maintained steady composure. As expected, Duran claimed an early and commanding lead, blazing toward the midpoint with terrifying efficiency. In contrast, Leo trailed behind, steadily channeling aura into his feet to increase pace. The crowd quickly dismissed him as a fluke, a fraud undeserving of his position. Among the chorus of doubters, a few voices rose in support, cheering earnestly, and Chelsea shouted loudest of all. Duran, eager to crush his rival, pressed harder, showcasing his family's trademark speed. Thomas, observing from the sidelines, grew anxious for Leo, who seemed destined to lose unless he pulled something drastic. Then, to everyone's confusion, Leo slowed down. He veered off the track and darted toward the perimeter walls. Even Celia struggled to understand his actions, which appeared downright foolish. But Leo remained focused. With precision, he increased the fire aura coursing through his legs and launched himself into a series of superhuman leaps, breaking away from the track entirely and bounding across the grassy field. He vaulted into the spectator stands, pausing as Duran expanded his lead. The fire in his feet peaked, scorching the stands and cracking the stone beneath him. Then came the leap. Leo burst back onto the track like a comet, a crimson trail erupting behind him in a minor explosion. Duran flinched, briefly distracted. But it was already too late. Leo tore through the rest of the track like a meteor, surging past Duran with effortless force. He crossed the finish line with such grace and velocity that silence swept the stands. Duran stood dumbfounded just meters behind, his aura flickering out in defeat. Leo tilted his head back with a confident smirk. He had won, unapologetically, overwhelmingly. Though parts of the stadium had been damaged in the process, the crowd considered it a fair price for the spectacle. To most, Duran was untouchable, the fastest first year. That Leo, not yet proficient in aura, had bested him was nearly unthinkable. But Celia saw the truth. Leo hadn't merely performed an aura step, he had achieved a phoenix step, bypassing a crucial stage entirely. Thomas and Chelsea erupted in celebration, praising Leo for his brilliance. The instructor, meanwhile, considered the implications. Duran's speed had been expected, but Leo's control over his fire aura was something else entirely. In one move, Leo had embodied the core principles of aura movement with flawless execution. Afterward, Leo approached Duran and offered a hand, suggesting it had been a good match. He even admitted that over a longer distance, the result might differ. Duran, bitter in defeat, shoved past the gesture and stalked off. The instructor took note. A hero may very well rise from this group. Once reunited with his friends, Chelsea gushed over Leo's performance, half joking that she wanted to train under him. Thomas, less amused, asked Celia for the reason Leo seemed to attract Chelsea's attention, but the answer was painfully obvious. When Thomas invited the group to a cafe, Leo declined, apologizing that he had other priorities. Asked where he was heading, Leo responded simply, he had research to do, specifically on classes in the summoning division. It confused them. Summoning had nothing to do with the night division. Still, Leo stuck to his explanation. He was curious. Why had the Fairy King gifted him a summoning-related pledge? In the hero's world, prizes typically mirrored the strength or path of their recipient. As a night division student, he should have received something combat or magic-related. Instead, his reward was connected to summoning, an art requiring a visit to the mysterious fairyland to even begin. While waiting for class, Leo encountered Chen Xia, the top scorer and captain of the Eastern Division. Her energy was warm and friendly, a welcome shift from the intense personalities he usually met. She introduced herself as Xia and expressed surprise at seeing Leo interested in summoning. He claimed he was simply interested in spiritual studies, which meant they'd likely cross paths often. Xia showed him her contract spirit, a beautiful water sprite. Leo, by contrast, hadn't formed any contracts yet. She offered to help if he ever needed it. Leo typically avoided help, but this time he didn't refuse. Their conversation veered into age, where she revealed she was 17. Leo, only 15, privately noted how youthful she looked, perhaps even more than Chelsea. Xia caught his thoughtful look and teased him about thinking something rude. Naturally, he denied it. Before departing, Xia complimented Leo's race performance, confessing that the image of him sprinting burned itself into her memory. She challenged him to a future match. Amused, Leo accepted silently. He wouldn't back down. Their summoning class began outdoors, rather than in a traditional setting. Only a handful of students gathered. Summoning was not a popular field. As Leo pondered the unusual location, the sky darkened. A massive, scaled shape flew overhead, wings blocking out the sun. A black wyvern. Some students nearly fainted at the sight. The rider dismounted gracefully, her white hair and commanding aura as fierce as the creature she rode. Introducing herself as Yura Marnin, summoning instructor for the freshman year, she quickly gained the awe of her students. Her beauty was striking, but her presence even more so. Yura wasted no time. She signaled for her assistant, Professor Carlo, to bring forth griffins for the students to ride in pairs. Griffins were notoriously difficult to manage, and Yura warned that any complaints would mean instant disqualification. Mounting her wyvern again, she soared above as her mount roared with authority. Despite nerves, the students managed to mount. Leo was paired with Xia, who asked to hold the reins. He agreed, and they took off together, their griffin soaring steadily. The experience was surreal. No one expected to ride griffins on day one. Some students fought over control, but Leo and Xia found a rhythm. Just as things settled, Yura blew a whistle. Its pitch nearly inaudible to human ears but crystal clear to the griffins. They went wild, talons flared, wings thrashed. Students panicked. Yura offered no aid, stating that anyone unable to handle a griffin didn't belong at Lumarine. Xia struggled with hers until Leo steadied her, guiding her hands gently. Using calm and intuition, he took control, and their griffin surged forward faster than ever. They even overtook the professor. Yura, impressed, questioned Carlo if Leo was really from the night division. He responded that according to the records, he was and also had no noble lineage either. Just pure talent. Eventually, every student landed safely on Summoned Beast Island, the heart of all summoning studies. The training had only just begun. Many of them threw up upon reaching the shore, overwhelmed by the dizzying flight. Meanwhile, Leo wandered the sandy beach, searching for a suitable fruit. When he finally found one perfectly ripe and sized, he approached to pick it and noticed a scorched feather lying beside it. His thoughts raced with possibilities, though he kept them to himself for now. Plucking the fruit, he offered it to the griffin in thanks for the safe journey. Once everyone had gathered, Miss Yura called the group to order and announced that they would undergo a practical exam immediately, on their very first day. Some had only intended to explore the class, not face an actual test. She stepped in to clarify that summoners, unlike the other two hero paths, must walk a much longer road, a fact every student should already understand. For summoners, merely controlling mana is far from enough to forge a proper contract. Spirit affinity is essential, and to control summons effectively, strong taming skills are indispensable. The path is long and difficult, which explains why summoner heroes are far rarer than other kinds. Still, among those who do earn the title, summoners often achieve feats greater than most. Legendary summoners have etched their names into history, embodying the allure of their arduous path. Each student in this class hoped, in their own way, to follow in those footsteps. Eliza Hergin, a descendant of the prestigious Northern Summoner hero clan, the Hergins, stepped forward to inquire about the exam. Uramarnan explained that, true to its name, the Summoned Beast Island was teeming with creatures and spirits. Since summons could be used as weapons, the exam would assess each student's taming skill. The task was simple: tame a summon in the forest and return to the beach. Those who succeeded could keep their summon permanently. The class erupted into cheers. It was a rare opportunity to form a lifelong bond with a creature, and the students rushed into the forest, eager to find their companions. Leo entered the woods calmly, ignoring the excitement. Eliza followed him, curious after hearing about his duel with Duran and spotting his name among the summoners. She couldn't resist approaching him. Julie, another standout student, observed their interaction from a distance. Leo downplayed the encounter, claiming he was merely doing his best. His dismissive tone, as if Eliza were any ordinary student, infuriated her. Uramarnan, watching from afar, had already identified the exceptional talents among her freshmen. Not long after, some students began successfully taming creatures. Yet none of these beings interested Leo. Some classmates noted that he had wandered unusually deep into the woods. Quiet hopes emerged that he would fail, earn a 0, and slink back to the night track. But Leo remained focused, guided by the feather he had found earlier. Once scorched, now perfectly whole, he pushed deeper until he reached a clearing. Ensuring his solitude, he summoned the fire within and burned the feather to ash. An intense, searing presence emerged behind him, confirming his suspicion. Meanwhile, in Leo's hometown, life had grown quieter since his departure. His mother, Reina, prepared food outdoors, evoking the charm of a Ghibli film. Though it was only his first day at school, worry still tugged at her. If she had seen what her son was doing at that very moment, she might have realized her concern was far from misplaced. Leo now stood surrounded by flames. Before him appeared the legendary Phoenix, one of the 3 grand summons. It had responded to Reina's fire essence and was stunned to find a child wielding it. Upon hearing Reina's name, Leo asked how the Phoenix knew his mother. The Phoenix then revealed that it owed her a great debt it could never repay. The Phoenix introduced herself formally as Farina, and Leo also told her his name. After exchanging names, Leo asked how she knew his mother. Farina explained that Reina had once saved her summoner, Ellen Lundar, a hero who had nearly died while conquering a dungeon in Siren. In that moment of peril, Reina had arrived, blazing with fire, and rescued Ellen, though the act had cost her the very fire that made her special. Had it not, Reina might have become a hero herself. Leo was stunned. This was the first time he'd heard any of this. Still, his mother had always insisted she had no regrets. Farina chuckled, saying that sounded exactly like the night she remembered. Changing topics, Leo asked why a legendary phoenix would appear on Summoning Island. Farina couldn't explain. She was equally surprised to encounter such a powerful aura in one so young. After inspecting him more closely, Farina concluded their meeting was fate. She had finally found a way to repay her debt. She told Leo to extend his hand and grasp her flame. The fire swirled around his palm and condensed into an egg, her offspring. Farina explained that though another summoner was meant to receive the egg, she now wished Leo to have it. He asked if it could be hatched and tamed immediately. She nearly fainted at the thought. But before she could stop him, Leo's body flared with fiery light. She tried to warn him that it was too soon and extremely dangerous. One misstep could kill him. Yet Leo pressed forward, undeterred. His determination reminded Farina of Reina, and all she could do was wish him luck. As the egg began to hatch, Leo entered a trance-like state. It felt as though only he and the fire existed. When he touched the flame within, it erupted into a wild blaze. The searing heat made breathing nearly impossible. Now he felt the agony phoenixes endured, eternal burning and endless rebirth. Instead of resisting, he embraced the flame, letting it consume him. The fire roared, burning through his flesh and bones. Yet as the egg absorbed the blaze, cracks appeared along its surface. Leo opened his eyes, a new understanding etched within them. The egg broke open. Inside was a small, fiery chick, Fiora. Farina beamed, shifting into human form and entrusting her offspring to Leo. Fiora looked like an ordinary red chick and was unusually adorable. By midday, most students had returned to the beach, each accompanied by modest summons common to the forest's edge. Uramarnan asked Carlo how much time remained. Only 5 minutes were left, and as expected, the 4 top candidates had yet to return. Suddenly, the ground shook. A massive bear cub barreled from the trees with Chen Sha riding it. She had tamed an aqua bear, a remarkable feat for a budding knight. Yet her entrance was soon overshadowed. A silent student swooped in on the talon of a shadow crow, another rare summon. Then, Eliza arrived atop a pristine white serpent, a gorgon snake, boasting that she'd added it to her family's collection. Just before the deadline, Leo appeared, walking casually with a tiny chick atop his head. Unlike the dramatic entries of others, his presence sparked laughter. Most assumed he had captured an ordinary chicken. But Yura Marnin, watching silently, felt a chill. She whispered under her breath, stunned that Leo had arrived with a phoenix. By dusk, the summoning class concluded, and the students returned to the academy. For most, the day was over, but Leo had unfinished business. He straightened his tie and knocked on an office door. Professor Yura greeted him, her features bathed in the golden glow of sunset. She welcomed him and offered a seat. Admitting it was her first time seeing an infant phoenix, she confessed that she hadn't known such a creature existed on the island. Contracting a phoenix was a feat unprecedented in academy history. Stepping closer, she stared at him intently and declared she understood who he really was. Leo stiffened, worried he had revealed too much. But instead, Miss Yura embraced him, calling him a genius summoner. However, she urged him to keep the phoenix contract secret. If word got out, chaos would follow. She insisted he choose summoning as his primary major after the exploratory classes. In her eyes, he was destined to become a legendary summoning hero. As a light joke, she added that he shouldn't expect to make her his summon. The next morning, Lumarine Academy woke to a brilliant sunrise. Chloe wandered the halls, still groggy. Thomas teased her that her mouth would split open from yawning so widely. She'd stayed up late reading magic texts. Just then, Leo approached and returned her student ID. She thanked him and was surprised to hear that he planned to sit in on magic classes. Chloe focused solely on magic. Thomas whispered that she was aiming to be the top of the magic division. Unfortunately, Thomas lacked a volume filter, and Chloe heard everything. The air grew cold. She blocked his escape path with a towering pillar of flawless ice and dragged him to the front row. 2 more students entered, Chelsea and Abad. They called Leo and he was really surprised to see them both. Suddenly, the classroom door burst open. A striking man in a sharp tie and slicked back hair strode to the podium. The girls whispered excitedly. This was Professor Len Horace, the first-year magic professor. He carried a stack of papers, then flicked his fingers. The sheets soared through the air and landed in front of each student. Without warning, the students were taking a magic theory exam. Anyone who failed to reach the required score would be expelled from his class. Soon, Assistant Professor Anna, cheerful and warm, stood ready to collect the tests. Leo struggled. The questions were beyond him. Modern magic had changed drastically, relying more on memorization than conceptual mastery. He managed to answer only one question. Embarrassed, he submitted his paper and left, resolving to study independently. Len Horace reviewed the exam swiftly, using no tools. While others failed the final question, he discovered someone had solved it. Question 50, worth 51 points. Anna leaned in and whispered the news. One student had found the answer. Professor Len Horace, a man known for his strict and stoic demeanor, was utterly startled. Upon hearing the astonishing news, he unexpectedly burst into hearty laughter in front of the entire class. He asked his students who among them had made history by solving the 50th question in a single attempt and earning a perfect score. The idea of shaping a once-in-a-generation magic prodigy caused him to blush and drool with excitement. However, Assistant Professor Anna quickly clarified that the student in question had not actually earned a perfect score. The professor shrugged it off, reasoning that the student must have skipped some earlier questions to dedicate extensive time to the last section, which seemed more important. Then Anna revealed an even bigger surprise. The student who got the final question right had left all the other 49 blank. The professor demanded the student's name, and Anna handed him the file of Leo. Professor Len Horace called out for Leo Plove to stand, but it was already too late. Even his friends hadn't noticed him slipping out after submitting his paper. Embarrassed, to break the awkward silence, Chelsea raised her hand and explained that Leo had left immediately after finishing the exam. His test score was completely abnormal. By solving only the final question, he technically ended up with the highest total score among all students. The buzz about the magic prodigy was already spreading through the cafeteria, where Leo was sitting with Celia Zerdinger. He told her what had happened, and she laughed at him for botching the test. Leo had acquired an adorable hatchling in summoning class but had failed miserably in magic theory. Celia believed he was wasting his time at the academy and urged him to focus on sword training since he was a knight major. When Leo suggested doing some stamina drills, Celia quickly changed the subject. Their casual chat was abruptly cut short by a chilling presence behind Leo. Professor Len Horace had come, furious. He believed the night major had mocked his class by walking out after answering only one question. He confronted Leo, asking if the rest of the exam was so trivial it wasn't worth his time. Leo stood up calmly and explained that he had honestly thought he had no chance of passing. Every question except the last one had seemed impossible to him, and he had no clue where to start. He explained that he had learned magic by reading old tomes on his own. Without keeping up with modern approaches, ideas began to form in the professor's mind. Suddenly, he lifted the young man from the floor as though he were a small pet. When he set Leo down, the boy had never felt so bewildered in his life. The professor's eyes sparkled with excitement as he beckoned Leo to follow him. Leo never got a chance to refuse or ask where they were headed. Professor Len Horace grabbed him by the collar and towed him out of the cafeteria like a child with a newly discovered toy. Celia watched, stunned, realizing it was her first time meeting the Academy's magic theory professor, and he certainly left an odd impression. Poor assistant Anna arrived seconds too late to intervene. Anna hurried after the professor, struggling to keep up with his frenetic pace. She couldn't catch her breath as Len escorted Leo to his office and immediately began writing magic theory questions on his chalkboard. He asked Leo to solve them on the spot. Len guessed that if Leo hadn't solved the final question by luck, then the boy must have a structured magic system in his mind. He stood aside, eager to see some innovative framework emerge from Leo's answers. Barely 10 seconds passed before Leo finished writing his final solution on the board. Startled and somewhat unnerved, Len asked if Leo had worked through every question mentally before writing them out. That was exactly what Leo had done. The professor felt he had struck gold. After many dull years, he believed he had finally discovered a seedling with the potential to reach the grandest hero tier. Meanwhile, Professor Albie was strolling through the halls, minding his own business. He had no idea his peaceful day was about to be disrupted by his overly eager colleague. Professor Len Horace rushed over, grinning widely with bright, energetic eyes. Albie sensed that whatever made Len so happy would wreck his otherwise tranquil day, so he turned to leave, but Len clung to Albie's feet like an overly excited puppy, repeatedly chanting thanks. Albie had to cast a spell to hold him back. This wasn't the first time Len had behaved like this, but today it was extreme. Len didn't care that he was left hanging. All he wanted was to express gratitude for discovering the genius, Leo Plove. Albie was puzzled. Why would a magic fanatic label a knight in training a brilliant mage? When Len mentioned knighthood and Leo together, his fury intensified. He insisted that Leo absolutely had to become a sorcerer and refused to let such talent go to waste swinging metal swords. At last, Anna caught up with him mid-rant. She reminded Len that pushing Leo toward knighthood would be a disgrace to the realm of sorcery. Albie then dropped Len onto the floor, but Anna caught him before crashing. He then appreciated Anna for cushioning his fall, but deep down she thought she would one day be the one to end his life. After rushing around campus, Anna's sunny demeanor faded as she demanded they all return to class. Right on cue, Leo strolled past the commotion, and Albie offered him a comforting smile. Leo concluded that sorcerers hadn't changed much over time. They still seemed just as crazy. A week later, the temporary classes ended. Leo relaxed on the rooftop, reading a book and avoiding the loud chaos below. As always, he delved into his own legacy. These days, Kyle, the hero of the beginning, was widely considered a fraud. Observing how the world had moved on without him weighed heavily on Leo's mind. Suddenly, the first-year professors burst into the principal's office without knocking, complaining loudly. In Professor Alendu's hand was Leo's application form, showing his selection of knighthood, sorcery, and summoning, every major hero path at once. Seeing his unreal potential, the professors scrambled to recruit him. Tackling all major disciplines was unheard of at the academy. They believed each pupil should commit to one specialty. The principal merely chuckled at their arguments, remarking that Leo reminded him of the mythical hero from overblown stories, which caused the professors to fall silent. The principal referenced the ancient figure, Kyle, the so-called hero of the beginning, and claimed that he was the only one in history said to have mastered all paths. Meanwhile, Celia Zerdinger and Chelsea Llewellyn panted as they circled the training track. Thomas spotted Leo relaxing under a tree and wondered why the girls were running so hard on a weekend. Chelsea had asked Leo to help train, and he agreed, but the non-stop laps were still a mystery. Leo explained that a hero needed boundless endurance more than anything, even more than weapons. This running would build that stamina. Chelsea agreed wholeheartedly, convinced stamina was the most vital trait for a battle mage. During a break, the girls gathered around Leo as he handed out water bottles to rehydrate. Surprisingly, Chelsea enjoyed the weekend training and wanted to keep running alongside him. At that moment, Celia spat out her water, remembering her own brutal experiences training with Leo. Since he intended to run anyway, he decided to lead the girls, but Celia swore she would never train with him again. Seeing their closeness, Thomas asked if something was happening between Leo and Celia, even guessing they might be dating. Celia quickly clarified they were cousins. Leo was her aunt's child. The news of Leo's noble blood stunned both Thomas and Chelsea. Leo finally stood and stretched, preparing to join the girls for another grueling cardio round. Never one for heavy workouts, Thomas took his leave to explore Lumarine City. Celia tried to go with him, but Leo grabbed his cousin by the hair, insisting today was strictly a training day. Thomas concluded that none of the nobles in his circle had any dignity left. Time marched on, and the eagerly anticipated day of class assignments arrived. Leo went to his assigned classroom, Class 15, where Thomas was already seated, beckoning him to sit beside him. Thomas, a cunning dealer, had arrived early and already discovered their placement. They noticed Chelsea sitting nearby, looking half dead after her weekend with Leo. Thomas asked what torture Leo had inflicted, and Leo said they had only covered the basics. Suddenly, two upperclassmen peeked into Class 15, known as the Class of Anguish, and jeered about how few newcomers would survive past the first term. A languid voice cut off their taunts. The two older students spun around, chills running down their spines. Before them stood Professor Harlan Edmund, their homeroom teacher, known as the Wailing Wall. He ordered the upperclassmen to form a makeshift chair and sat on them. He called his students worthless trash, reminding them Class 15 had the lowest scores of all new enrollees. He was certain the students had heard stories about him already. He asked if anyone understood why he had become the advisor of this entry-level class. Thomas raised his hand, suggesting the Wailing Wall had come to boost everyone's academic standing. The professor already knew Thomas's name. His reply was fitting for someone ranked last in the academy. Professor Edmund then asked if anyone grasped the students' duty. Chelsea boldly answered that their duty was to conquer the hero's world via assigned missions. He admitted that was correct, yet, he saw only kids who looked like they would perish minutes after stepping into a hero's world. Wouldn't it be better to expel these weaklings who would drag down their allies? That was why he had taken charge of Class 15, earning his grim nickname. Though he frightened his students, Leo remained unshaken. The professor silently concluded this boy might actually survive the hero's world. He instructed them all to switch into workout gear and proceed to the training grounds. It was their first official day, time for combat training. Class was now in session. The students assembled swiftly on the running track under the blazing sun. Professor Edmund placed a large umbrella, folding chair, and refreshments at the sidelines. His plan was to overhaul the rotten attitudes they had developed after enrolling in the academy. The professor posed a challenging question. In a truly perilous situation, what would genuinely save them when everything turned dire? Nella Carvin, a shy knight major known for her rare healing aura, timidly answered that her companions would protect her. Professor Edmund shook his head, insisting she was wrong. The true salvation of their souls depended on their own personal skills. Only by sharpening their abilities under real threat could they even think of aiding others. He pressed further, asking if anyone was confident enough to guarantee the safety of their peers. A lively voice from the group boldly claimed absolute certainty. The professor turned to the speaker, Leona Layden, a dual-class magical knight full of energy, and challenged her to form a fireball to prove her skill. Leona conjured a fireball with ease, but Professor Edmund was unimpressed. He mocked the spell's size and power, saying it wasn't strong enough to take down an ant. Irritated, Leona summoned more mana, producing two larger fireballs and wrapping her surroundings in a sea of flames. She not only doubled the number but also the size of each orb. Professor Edmund took a slow sip from his juice box, applauding sarcastically. Then he created a small sphere of wind and challenged Leona to strike it with her fiery display. The wind sphere gradually took the shape of a wind spirit, darting through the air on its own. It zipped near Leona, taunting her flames and even tapping her nose in mockery. Enraged, Leona unleashed a barrage of fireballs, desperately trying to hit the elusive spirit. She wasted her mana on attacks that never connected. The professor interrupted, asking why she would bother enlarging or multiplying her attacks if she couldn't land a single hit. This exercise was meant to highlight the gap between flashy moves and practical effectiveness. Only by refining their skills and breaking personal barriers could they walk the path of a true hero. The Wailing Wall, as some called the professor, grinned and declared that class wouldn't end until someone caught his wind spirit. Leo watched quietly. Despite the harshness of the professor's words, he agreed they were true. Perhaps he should try it himself. While the others ran laps chasing the spirit, Professor Edmund's gaze fixed on Leo, silently assessing whether the freshman was all talk or truly a hero like the legendary Kyle. The spirit continued to evade capture, running circles around them all. Then, Leo released his aura, focusing it downward to strengthen his legs. In a single explosive burst, he propelled himself forward like a blazing projectile, tearing through the air with flawless concentration. His speed was extreme. Perhaps he really could be the first genuine multi-class hero. Thomas and Chelsea were already exhausted from the chase, but Leo, wrapped in a fierce aura, executed a refined maneuver. He launched himself into the air, targeting the spirit's blind spot with a gravity-assisted dive so swift the spirit barely had time to react. He missed by a fraction of a second, seemingly botching his strike, but his grin suggested otherwise. Quietly, he extended thin aura tendrils from his hand, forming a tether that latched onto the spirit's foot and pinned it in place. Unfortunately for Class 5, no one reached the immobilized spirit in time. It was snatched up by Duran Moira, the lightning-fast show-off. His speed was impressive, but Leo's aura tether had done the hard work by stopping the spirit. The conceited smirk on Duran's face was enough to irritate anyone. Then another figure strolled onto the field, applauding with a cheerful grin. Professor Sejin, homeroom teacher of Class 1 and currently ranked second in the Academy's graduating class polls. He seized the moment to flaunt his class's prowess and even offered to coach Class 5 a bit. Meanwhile, Professor Harlan Edmund lounged comfortably in his chair, sipping juice packs without watching the field. He told Sejin to take over his class for the day, noting that although Sejin ranked number 2, Edmund himself usually topped the polls every year. The students buzzed with excitement at the thought of a showdown between these two pillars of Lumerian Academy, both veterans of over 20 years. Professors Alendu and Len Horace had once been their apprentices. Curious, Nella asked Thomas how he knew so much about the Academy's inner workings. Thomas claimed to be someone quick with information. Professor Sejin laughed, unsure why his rival Edmund had taken command of the weakest freshman group but eager to discover his motives. Sejin proposed a contest between Class 1 and Class 5, a match of Bastera. Edmund rose and called Sejin a genius for the idea, shaking his hand and agreeing that hands-on practice was the best teacher. He sank back into his seat, handing all officiating duties to Sejin. Sejin was baffled that he kept losing the graduation poll to this seemingly lazy man, while his own students eyed him with sympathy. The Wailing Wall gave his class a final warning. The Bastera match against Class 1 was their prime chance to refine their skills. Then he added a final chilling note: if they lost, the entire class would be expelled. The students were stunned. It was only their first lesson with him. To make matters worse, their opponents had 3 captains among them. Edmund dismissed their complaints, telling them to push harder if they wanted to survive. After all, they had the Academy's freshman representative on their team. He instructed Leo to select 6 participants. Leo sensed this was a test, not out of spite, but because his classmates had already lost motivation after barely a week. They needed a spark, and Leo believed Edmund intended him to reignite their morale. Class 1's instructor used magic to form the Tade while Leo pondered a strategy to turn the match around. Hoping to rescue his teammates from despair, Lumerian Academy's highest-ranking figures now stood against Class 5. Even Chelsea was sweating, nervous about the match. She tried to explain Bastera's rules to Leo, who had no clue about the game. It sounded like a typical ball sport, but Thomas corrected her, saying it was far riskier. Celia Zerdinger, the sword princess, teased Chelsea for looking so defeated. Chelsea snapped back, vowing not to lose or run away this time. Leo stayed calm, telling them to ease up. There was no chance they'd lose. Celia Zerdinger was furious, eager to reveal her training results soon, while Chloe Muller was dead set on defeating the freshman representative, determined to improve on last time. Professor Sejin called the participants to the Tade. Chelsea and Liana stepped forward, fully aware that defeat meant expulsion. Thomas and Nella quickly followed. Leo signaled to Edmund that Class 5 was ready. Sejin tossed the ball high into the air. Every player fixed their gaze on it. The match opened with Duran and Leo lunging for the ball, but Duran was a fraction faster, grabbing it first to secure the early lead. The game had barely begun when Leo realized it might be the perfect time to figure out the rules. He learned from Tade Mareva that he needed to channel aura into the ball and score by tossing it into the goal without direct body contact. First to 11 points wins. Duran threw the ball lightning fast, forcing Leo to dodge. Thomas couldn't track it as it zipped past and sank neatly into the goal. Class 1 scored the opening point, plunging Class 5 into deeper discouragement. Thomas felt the strain, fearing expulsion if things continued. Leo questioned how they could gain possession of the ball. There were 3 ways. Snatch it if it went out of bounds on the other team's turn, intercept it mid-flight, or, most importantly, render an opponent unable to play by assaulting them with the ball, since direct physical attacks were forbidden. Just as Thomas explained the last method, Celia blasted Liana with a powerful throw, ridiculing their chatter during the game. Liana couldn't continue, leaving Class 5 a member down. Both professors watched closely. It was said that any team with a strong fire element tended to dominate Bastera, and with so many eyes on her, fire truly reigned supreme. Sejin couldn't understand why Edmund agreed to this match, especially with Celia on Class 1's side. The odds seemed hopeless. Edmund yawned, dismissing the concern, and reminded Sejin of an old memory. His very first pupil, the Empress of Bastera, had been a beast at this sport. Her offspring was the key player for Class 5, a fact that stunned Sejin. Back on the field, Class 5 acted like a bunch of complainers, doubting themselves and why they even enrolled. Celia noticed Leo igniting his fire aura and finally pushing himself seriously. He charged a blazing fireball and hurled it with terrifying velocity, forcing Chloe Muller to conjure an icicle barrier. Chloe assumed she had blocked it completely, acting smug. But Leo appeared beside her, calmly declaring he would score no matter what. He leapt and slammed the ball hard with his fist, shattering her defense. Even Professor Sejin was surprised by Leo's tactical brilliance. Class 5 erupted in cheers, rallying behind their freshman representative. Class 1's professor realized the match had truly begun. Several goals followed, with the score climbing to 9-10. Many players were taken out along the way. Finally, lightning-quick Duran launched a throw meant to seal the match. Thomas threw himself in front, barely holding on before collapsing, leaving the match balanced. But Class 5 was down to just Leo, while Class 1 still had 3 captains. Numbers were against them. Chloe created multiple duplicates to bolster defense. Leo prepared for a decisive jump against Celia and Duran. He bent his legs, pushed off the ground, and accelerated at inhuman speed, disappearing from their sight. He performed a flash step so fast he slipped past Celia unnoticed, heading straight for the goal, leaving Chloe alone to defend. Chloe struggled to track the real Leo among his illusions, wearing herself out. Leo flew past, and she fell in defeat, wondering how an ordinary human could wield such elven-style magic. Not even the 3 captains stopped him. Class 5 emerged victorious, and cheers erupted as they celebrated relief and joy, knowing how close they had come to expulsion. Professor Sejin was stunned, realizing Edmund had forced them into a do-or-die scenario to push them to victory. The 3 captains were crushed by their loss. Sejin approached Chloe, asking if she was upset. He reminded her to uphold the tradition of saluting rivals and praised their hard work. His glowing words captured the students' hearts. Edmund, in contrast, was blunt. He stood and branded them losers, mocking them openly. Both classes had given their all. Class 1 showcased formidable skills, while Class 5 showed grit and fought until the last moment. Sejin stressed that pushing beyond limits had won the match and hoped both sides would grow from the experience. Their rivalry simmered beneath a tense handshake. Celia's sharp tone irritated Chelsea, who fired back with a biting retort. Nearby, Thomas greeted Duran Moira with an overly cheerful smile, but Duran's wide-eyed stare suggested he saw a ghost rather than a friend. Chloe Muller struggled to hold back tears of embarrassment until Leo offered his hand, praising her effort with genuine encouragement. At first, Chloe suspected mockery, but his sincere expression made her reconsider. She shook his hand firmly, secretly hoping to surpass him one day. A full month passed. During a shared meal, Thomas asked about club plans. Leo surprised everyone by expressing his desire not to join an existing club but to start one. His enthusiasm nearly unhinged Thomas. Chelsea immediately volunteered to join, supporting Leo's idea to create the Hero Research Society. Though the name sounded odd, Leo's goal was clear: to research the forgotten hero Kyle, dismissed by most as a mere legend without historical proof. Thomas doubted anyone would sign up, but Chelsea was eager to be the first member. Their conversation paused as a commotion caught their attention. Thomas remembered today was special, the day fifth-year seniors returned from their dungeon-clearing mission. These missions involved raiding hero dungeons, generated by scattered hero record fragments worldwide. Seniors often spent weeks or months recovering these fragments. Leo guessed his mother might have participated in similar raids. Chelsea recognized some returning seniors as Academy elites: Riz Amua, the powerful Easterner; Toru Yan, a Southern beauty; and Senior Ulta, dressed in ultra-comfortable clothes. The strongest, however, was absent: the council president, Riss. Thomas was about to comment on Riss when Leo vanished without a trace. Someone joked that the authorities had detained him for being too powerful. Celia quickly dragged Leo outside, revealing that Riss had requested a private meeting. Confused, Leo wondered why Riss suddenly wanted to see him. Celia mocked Leo's cluelessness about school politics but promised he'd soon understand. He followed, ending up in a place Celia found peculiar. Then, unexpectedly, the Sword Princess leapt to hug her brother. Yes, Riss was her sibling, and he was excited to meet Leo, who aimed to master every major. They then shared dumplings, though Celia felt anxious. She had never tasted these before. After a small bite, she was pleasantly surprised by the flavor. Riss had planned this meeting since her arrival, eager to connect because Leo's mother once held great prestige in their family. Riss reminisced about Leo's mother, a legendary student who pushed boundaries, openly criticized the academy's dessert menu, and even led a student revolt against the principal. Celia was stunned by these tales. The siblings chatted warmly as Leo found Riss immensely impressive. Convinced he deserved the title of the academy's finest and was destined for hero status, Riss decided to treat them to dessert and sent them outside while he settled the bill. Alone, he discovered a strange object tucked in his coat, unsure how it got there. The scene shifted to Edmund's classroom, where Leona tried to ask a question but was instantly dismissed as pathetic. Edmund showed no patience and casually admitted he had forgotten to elect a class representative for Class 5. Instead, he lazily appointed Leo to the role. Leona and Thomas reminded him a democratic vote was required, but they quickly realized it was safer to keep quiet. Edmund wanted the representative to handle paperwork so he could avoid responsibility. Then, an announcement was made about a joint hero study session which required all first-year students to gather in the auditorium. Leo asked if they should go immediately and got their teacher's approval. At the auditorium, they found a worn-out Chloe Muller, looking half dead and desperately pleading for recovery potions from the resident alchemist. She managed to buy the last few potions, though Leo suspected she was overdoing it so early in the academic year. Chloe downed the potions despite Leo's warning. Her pride as the top magic theory student made her terrified of losing her status. She feared Leo would soon surpass her in modern magic and tests. Thomas couldn't understand why second place mattered so much. Chelsea explained that for Chloe, being a tower magician meant everything. While battle mages didn't worry about theory rankings, Chloe's role in research and discovery placed her pride firmly on the line. Chelsea also doubted whether their alchemist was truly a mage. Sadly, Chloe still felt drained even after drinking the potions but suddenly noticed something unusual. Meanwhile, Headmaster Callion observed a damaged hero's page brought by Riss. Although the relic was damaged, it had inexplicably reacted to an unknown stimulus, despite no relics nearby to trigger it. Callion asked if it had reacted again after the first time and learned nothing else had happened. Deep in thought, he chose to investigate personally and advised Riss to rest. Having just returned from an assignment, he instructed his assistant Elena to bring the damaged hero's page to the auditorium for the first-year joint class. They learned that even tiny fragments could respond if touched by someone named in the hero's record. This time, it was Leo, though no one realized it yet. Inside the bustling auditorium, first-year students gathered for their first joint session. Professor Arshan Neer, an adorable but formidable woman, asked them to quiet down. Despite her gentle demeanor, the students continued chatting. Frustrated, she unleashed a terrifying burst of anger, warning them in a trembling voice to stop or risk their lives. Her mood shifted abruptly from timid to harsh and murderous, cursing them for acting foolishly. Then she froze, realizing she had silenced the room. Instantly, she reverted to her sweet, bashful manner, as if nothing had happened. The students, though sweating nervously, accepted her fearsome potential. Leo recognized her as a spirit summoner, a rare class even in his past life. Professor Arshan began the lesson, dagger in hand, explaining the origins of the hero records and how heroic realms manifested. To unlock a hero's world, one needed an object deeply connected to that hero, a conduit. This explained why a hero's descendants found it easier to access their ancestors' domain. The Academy preserved these records to honor bloodline ties. She compared the relationship to a key and a chess game. Leo was impressed by her explanation and listened eagerly as she stressed the importance of hero studies for discovering clues about heroes' domains and expanding knowledge. Eventually, students would select a hero to draw power from by clearing their respective pages. Suddenly, Elena arrived with fragments of a hero's record recently retrieved by the 5th year. The students erupted with excitement. She showed them the relic, then sealed it again, before asking about their motivations for becoming heroes. Celia Zerdinger declared her ambition to become the mightiest knight in her family, impressing Arshan. Chloe hoped to create an original spellbook of her own. Thomas wanted to support future hero candidates. Finally, Leo boldly announced his goal was to eradicate Erebus once and for all, grabbing everyone's attention, professors included. Professor Arshan attempted to continue the session smoothly, though it was clear her composure was shaken by Leo's bold declaration. Students from various classes murmured among themselves, dismissing his plan as mere bravado. Yet, the professor knew better. Leo never spoke without purpose. Erebus, once a formidable force, had been shattered into countless fragments and sealed away a millennium ago. In recent years, some pieces had begun to stir, each fragment capable of wreaking devastating havoc. The idea of completely destroying Erebus was unthinkable, yet here was Leo, proposing exactly that. The professor decided to let the students explore the hero's record firsthand, planning to give each class a chance to examine their fragment before explaining how to clear a hero's world in emergencies. She warned that instructors would be watching closely, discouraging any reckless actions. Excitement buzzed through the room as the students anticipated their turn to handle a hero's record. The staff called forward each class's representative, Celia Zerdinger from Class 1, Leo from Class 5, along with Abad and Chen Shaw from other classes. 2 fragments had been retrieved from the dungeon, but only one would be used for the lesson. The smaller piece was displayed separately to show the variations among the fragments. Leo was the first to approach. As he interacted with the fragment, the hero's record unlocked, though its name and chapter remained hidden. The professors exchanged uneasy glances as the record's reaction grew intense. Suddenly, the entire group, class representatives and professors alike, were transported into the hero's world, finding themselves amid a chaotic battlefield strewn with mountains of monster corpses. Professor Edmund immediately cautioned the students to stay alert because they were inside a hero's dungeon. Quickly surveying their surroundings, Professor Sejin spotted a fortress wall in the distance, a key hint to their location. Leo, drawing on ancient knowledge, recognized the walls as the last line of defense of a city from the Age of Catastrophe, the walls of Gardeslan. If Leo's deductions were correct, only he fully grasped the gravity of the situation. From afar, a voice addressed him by the name Kyle, apologizing for an old wish left unfulfilled. The voice belonged to Lycinas, a legendary hero and companion of Kyle's from millennia ago. Though her wish once seemed naive, she had believed wholeheartedly they would save the world, and in the end, they did. Encountering Lycinas in such a devastated war zone stirred a flood of emotions in Leo. Her radiant smile pierced the gloom of the hero's dungeon, abruptly breaking the illusion and returning everyone to the real world. This strange episode was triggered because Leo had touched that small, unidentified fragment, meant only for display. The students, bewildered, sought answers from their professors, but none could provide any. Professor Edmund, clearly stressed, quickly suspended classes and instructed everyone to leave the auditorium calmly. As the students filtered out, Leo lingered by the podium, clutching the tiny scrap of the hero's record, deep in thought. He was convinced it was his own, Kyle's record, and that it held the key to his quest. Professor Edmund, intrigued by Leo's absorption, observed quietly. With the day's lessons cancelled, students dispersed to empty classrooms. In one such room, Leo described the fleeting vision of Lycinas, speculating the academy had uncovered her record. Chelsea's eyes sparkled with excitement, while Leona clenched her fists, frustrated she hadn't pushed harder for class president to be part of such historic moments. Thomas mocked her chances, which earned him a quick retaliation from her. Their bickering drew Professor Edmund's attention, who issued a strict warning: either study quietly or face expulsion. His odd delivery left the students uncertain if he was joking, but none dared risk further disruption. Lost in thought, Leo pondered why his hero's record was so thoroughly damaged compared to others. It was so ruined that even the world's name and chapter were hidden. It seemed intentional. Someone wanted to erase Kyle's history. Since hero records allowed wielders to channel their powers, such destruction suggested a determined enemy preventing a new hero's rise. Leo suspected Erebus, the fragmented yet immensely powerful foe, was behind it. After this unsettling episode, the school returned to quiet normalcy. The narrative shifts to the magic department, where Professor Len Horace detailed the midterm practical exam. Each first-year student had to create an original magic spell, and the phrase, "original magic," sent waves of anxiety through the young mages. It was a test of creativity and power in an era dominated by standard activation formulas. Original spells were rare, often serving as a hidden trump card in critical moments. This tradition traced back to star magic, a foundational, powerful offshoot learned by elves. Only one person had ever mastered its full form: Luna, the founding hero of Nebulage. As Professor Len stressed the exam's importance, Chloe sat nearby with a dark, mysterious book resting on her desk. Leo couldn't shake the uneasy feeling radiating from it. Noticing his curiosity, Chloe quickly hid the book away. To Leo's eye, it resembled a grimoire. When the professor ended class, Leo hurried after Chloe and gently took her hand, startling her with the unexpected gesture. He invited her to lunch, though his real motive was to learn more about the book. Chloe rejected him with a sharp glare, focused entirely on defeating Leo in the upcoming exam. Thomas teased Leo about challenging the Ice Queen at her specialty. While Chloe's determination burned fiercely, she was determined to win no matter what. Recognizing her resolve, Leo extended his hand in challenge, promising to be ready. Chloe accepted with a hollow stare, more focused than ever. Thomas watched amused, amazed at his friend's ability to engineer such moments. Before nightfall, Leo found himself inside the Tower of Heroes, an immense structure rumored to hold Lumarine Academy's forbidden library. He hoped that inside, he might uncover clues about the mystery of his missing hero's record. As he ascended the tower's steps, upper-year students seemed drawn to his presence. Suddenly, a voice called his full name. The speaker was Toru Yan, a senior with tan skin, curly hair, and round glasses, a known figure from the magic department. Chewing bubblegum, Toru blocked his path, curious why a first year would come to the Tower of Heroes. Leo explained he sought to meet the student council president. His calm confidence piqued her interest, and she urged him to commit fully to magic before semester's end. After teasing him, she stepped aside, leaving the choice to him. Leo smiled politely and continued on. Near the summit, Leo encountered other upperclassmen waiting for the elevator. He joined them and pressed the button for the 9th floor, but it didn't light up. After repeated attempts, a firm voice explained the controls required mana to operate. Lee Zamua, a friendly 5th year from the night department, stood nearby. He greeted Leo warmly and expressed surprise at seeing a first-year so unafraid to roam the tower alone. Impressed by Leo's determination, Lee suggested Leo focus on the night department, but Leo curtly declined and changed the subject. Finally arriving at his destination, Leo knocked and introduced himself, requesting entry to the forbidden library. Then, a kind voice invited him in. Inside, President Riss sat buried in paperwork but greeted Leo warmly. Leo asked directly for permission to access the library. Riss's expression grew serious, recognizing the gravity of such a request. He explained that only 2 methods existed for typical students to enter the forbidden library. The first involved conquering a hero dungeon and returning the recovered pages. Aware he was far from meeting that requirement, Leo asked about the alternative. Riss leaned in, wearing a sly grin, and promised to reveal the secret, only if Leo joined the student council. A few days after the seniors cornered him in the student council office, the night department's major practical exam began at the academy's open stadium. A large crowd of spectators, including students and faculty, gathered to witness the first day of this monumental evaluation. Ever the entrepreneur, Thomas wheeled out an entire popcorn cart, ready to sell snacks to the crowd. His sales pitch was simple and effective. No one could enjoy the upcoming matches without some popcorn in hand. Watching Thomas go all out, Chelsea was unsure whether she was impressed or mortified. Liana, on the other hand, thought Thomas could have made a fortune if he weren't confined to Lumarine Academy. Many students from the Leo family stood alongside their fellow first-year night department classmates, surveying the bustling crowd. As expected, Chloe was absent. Professor Alendu stood on the field, his stern glare emphasizing the exam's seriousness. Without delay, he announced the first 2 students to open the sparring matches: Hall Snafe from Class 1 and Leo Plove from Class 5. Hall, a sly-looking boy, bore a gaze and grin that seemed anything but trustworthy. His challenger was Leo Plove, the first-year representative of the night department. Both contenders took the stage, energizing the Tade with palpable anticipation. Meanwhile, Thomas hunted for more buyers, his gaze fixed on Professor Sejin nearby. Jogging over, he offered the grouchy professor a popcorn and drink combo to enjoy during the match. Sejin scoffed at the idea, insisting that only messy types like Professor Harlan Edmund would indulge in such trivial snacks. Seeing he couldn't easily sway Sejin, Thomas glanced toward Class 1 for backup. Fortunately, Celia was there. One look from Thomas, and she understood his plan. She activated her hidden tactic, cranking her sweetness to the max as she asked if the professor planned to treat the entire class to popcorn. The bait was set. Thomas encouraged the class to chant their professor's name enthusiastically. Watching his students cheer, Professor Sejin gradually relented. Though arrogant, he valued his class's approval and agreed to give each student a popcorn and drink set, 1 per person. Thomas's sails soared as the opponents assumed their starting stances. Leo wore a confident, almost arrogant grin and teased that Hall was fortunate to be his first victim. Hall realized Leo didn't see him as a serious threat. Determined to prove otherwise, the snake-like boy readied himself, refusing to be overlooked. Before the official start, Thomas gave a quick rundown. The night department midterms were a series of duels. The first to secure 5 wins would pass. A tense feeling spread among the crowd. Although Leo was the first-year rep, few had witnessed his skills firsthand. Since he studied across 3 departments, many assumed he might lag behind specialists. Meanwhile, Hall ranked 3rd in Class 1, just below powerhouses Celia and Duran. He wielded a spear, and his aura radiated a dangerous, venomous energy. Hall displayed his prowess, brandishing his spear with precise aim. To him, Leo was just an arrogant boy who lingered near Celia. Professor Alendu issued a final note. Whoever incapacitated the other would win, and they should fight as if it were a real conflict. The starting signal blared. Leo was immediately startled by a dark aura he hadn't sensed in ages. Surprisingly, it didn't come from his nearby foe but from somewhere else on the Lumerian Academy campus. That vile, sinister energy lingered in his thoughts like a dreadful omen. Unaware of the source, Leo remained focused. The menacing aura actually came from the library, where Chloe was immersed in countless tones, training hard for the magic department's midterm. The formula she scribbled piled on numerous discarded pages of failed concepts. Stress overwhelmed the so-called Ice Queen. Despite her efforts, she couldn't develop a triumphant, innovative spell using only her own knowledge. Feeling hopeless, she lashed out at the scattered books. Leo's overshadowing talent haunted her thoughts, slowly consuming her resolve. Her determination not to lose to this prodigious boy pushed her to the breaking point. One volume stood out among the mess, an ancient grimoire she had been clutching for some time. With no other option, she became convinced this artifact was her sole shot at victory. Desperate to remain first in her department, her mind grew susceptible to outside forces. Her crisis, combined with the grimoire's eerie power, was so potent it reached Leo's senses mid-bout. Seizing Leo's momentary distraction, Hall rushed forward and thrust his spear toward Leo's head. Leo barely evaded the attack in time. Hall then revealed his family's hallmark skill, morphing his spear tip into a venomous, snake-like blade. The weapon lunged erratically toward Leo's chest. Calm and unflinching, Leo snatched the spear bare-handed. Hall was stunned. The strength needed to halt his strike must be immense. Caught off guard, Hall lost his grip on the weapon while Leo yanked it free. Hall was dragged along, looking foolish and untrained. Once close enough, Leo mocked Hall by planting a playful fist to his cheek. The blow sent Hall tumbling across the tade like a ragdoll. Though briefly distracted, Leo quickly refocused. A battle-tested fighter never lingered in carelessness. Humiliated, Hall poured his aura into creating a poisonous mist, warning Leo to stop showing off. The real fight was just beginning. Green venomous fog spilled from his body, filling the tade with noxious fumes. Hall believed Leo couldn't wield aura, and even if he was strong physically, this basic disadvantage would ensure his defeat. Leo unleashed his scorching aura, noting how rare venom-based auras were. When the toxic fog reached him, he simply burned it away. Hall intensified his aura, confident that unless Leo's flames rivaled Celia's, he would eventually triumph. While Hall basked in pride, Leo closed in unharmed, ready to teach the overconfident student a lesson. Striding forward like a swaggering hero, his flames utterly neutralized the poisonous haze. The crowd roared in excitement, munching popcorn as the vivid clash unfolded. From Class 1, Duran watched with his usual scowl, while Celia looked stunned. Chelsea applauded Leo enthusiastically, amazed by every move he made. She never imagined Leo had elevated his flame aura to such a frightening level. Unprepared for the intensity, Hall realized, to his shock, that Leo's flames matched Celia's, the top knight in their cohort. Who would have thought a student juggling 3 departments could excel so remarkably as a dedicated knight? Still, Hall prepared a secret technique he had reserved to someday topple Celia. He hadn't imagined needing it against Leo Plove in the first midterm match. He molded his aura into a venomous serpent, creating a snake prison, and flinging it at Leo. Intrigued, Leo allowed himself to be ensnared, studying the serpent's form intently. Hall felt confident, even shyly looking toward Celia in the stands. He believed this move rivaled Celia's fire and was ready for its first real test. Noticing Hall's blush, Celia sighed and gestured toward the opposite side of the tade. Hall's pride slipped briefly, missing that Leo was heating the snake prison until it bubbled and sizzled. With a final surge, Leo easily scorched the aura attack away. Hall gaped in disbelief as his painstaking skill was reduced to ashes. Irritated, he halted his aura and raised his spear for another strike. During the fight, Leo had never drawn his blade, but when he finally did, he deflected the spear so firmly it slipped from Hall's grasp, pressing the blade's tip against Hall's neck. Leo cautioned him not to look away from fire or risk injury. The defeated teen sank to his knees as Professor Alendu declared Leo Plove the victor with flair. Chelsea's heart raced as she applauded her hero. Thomas, ever confident, had expected nothing less than Leo's easy triumph. Hall returned to his corner, conceding Leo was on another level in real combat. No wonder Celia stayed close to him. To Hall's surprise, Celia herself commended his showing despite his crushing defeat. He glanced up to see her beaming from the stands, applauding his composure. Though defeated, that compliment was worth clinging to forever. Next, the professor summoned Liana from Class 5 to the stage. Bursting with energy, she immediately asked who her opponent would be. When Professor Alendu announced Chen Xia from Class 10, Liana's enthusiasm evaporated. She had hoped for an easy fight, but now faced a top contender. Both young women took their places, facing each other as they awaited the start. Smiling, Chen Xia offered a combo wish of luck. Despite the gesture's power, Liana refused to yield. She returned the smile with quiet resolve. Chen Xia calmly summoned a water aura, gentle waves swirling like a tranquil sea. In contrast, Liana's blazing spirit flared like wild flames as she gripped her slender rapier. Relying on her sword's strength, she dashed forward to thrust. Chen Xia braced herself inside a protective water sphere. Leo, watching from the stands, knew taking a rapier head-on would be brutal, yet charging recklessly into a dense water shield was equally dangerous. Liana acted too quickly, trying to end the match in one blow. She paid the price. Chen Xia's water sphere was not just defensive, it could deal punishing damage. The calm strength secured Chen Xia an easy win in the second match. Liana rose, shaking off the sting of a quick loss. Despite the humiliation, she felt her performance wasn't terrible. Leo had anticipated this outcome given the mismatch. The duel might have lasted longer and ended better if Liana had kept a cooler head. For the third match, Professor Alendu summoned Celia Zerdinger, the night department standout from Class 1. The third bout promised a major showdown no one expected so soon. Celia's rival was Duran Moira, the moody classmate perpetually ranked second. Celia eyed him and grinned, sensing an exhilarating clash. Though smiling, Duran took the duel seriously. From the stands, Thomas somehow had a 3D lens and shoved a bucket of popcorn at Leo to share. All eyes turned to the stage. The clash of titans was rare, and the electrifying atmosphere did not disappoint. Heat crackled as both drew blades and flared their auras, ready to settle who truly reigned in the night department. As the signal rang, Duran struck first with a blistering charge, merging himself and sword into a thunderous attack. Celia, a skilled sword master, parried with ease. For many first years, this was their first glimpse of her true prowess. Enthralled by the tense fight, Thomas asked Leo who he would bet on. Leo, munching popcorn, predicted that if the pace stayed the same, Celia might lose. Leo was taken aback by the boldness of Duran's assault but refused to discount his cousin Celia. Even from a distance, he noticed the fierce determination blazing in her eyes. He suspected she was holding back a special technique, waiting for the perfect moment to turn the tables. Duran, undeterred, increased his speed and pressed on with his relentless offensive. Caught off guard, Celia barely evaded a lethal strike aimed at her neck, relying purely on instinct. Duran was confident he could overpower her in a direct melee, a mistake he would soon regret. Celia raised her refined blade, summoning flames more intense than any witnessed thus far. The inferno blazed with such heat that the tide's safety barrier began to flicker. Pushed to its limits, most freshmen had never seen combat of such high caliber. Leo praised Celia's decision to reveal her powerful technique at just the right time. Thomas looked puzzled, prompting Leo to explain. The Tade was small, and Celia must have realized she couldn't outpace Duran, so she transformed the battlefield into her blazing domain. That strategic move equalized the match, forcing Duran into caution. The searing heat reduced visibility, making each moment more perilous. Celia had not only refined her power but had grown more cunning in its application. She cornered Duran, used the rising heat as cover, and appeared behind him with blinding speed. Her flaming strike might have ended the match had Duran's reflexes not saved him. Pushed to the edge, Duran swung wildly, losing composure against a fighter who punished every mistake. Celia caught his sword barehanded and rendered it useless. With the entire ring ablaze, she dominated her opponent and ended the duel with a bold headbutt, knocking Duran unconscious. The flames dissipated as Celia Zerdinger claimed the third match of the day, drawing wild cheers from the crowd. Dusting off her clothes, Celia smiled and told Duran to focus more on power than speed. When he finally regained consciousness, he accepted her hand and stood shakily. The academy press and fans of the school's top pair swooned at the sight. Leo, watching with pride, was relieved to see Celia's intense training finally bear fruit. Professor Harlan Edmund appeared behind them, munching popcorn. Apparently, he had been eavesdropping on Leo's commentary and found it rather insightful. By day's end, the night department exam matches concluded without any major issues. Celia, Duran, and Chen Shaw each walked away with 4 wins and 1 loss. Leo, however, swept all 5 matches and emerged as the undisputed top performer. A week later, following the night exam, the general linguistics test wrapped up. Professor Edmund, as rumpled as always, praised the class's efforts and warned that poor scores could still lead to failure. Once he left, Class 5 erupted in mixed reactions. Even Liana, normally full of energy, worried about expulsion. The more studious students gathered around Chelsea, eager to glimpse her answer sheet. Their class president simply napped at his desk. Nearby, Nella nudged Leo awake and asked how he did. He said it wasn't too bad, though his expression said otherwise. Nella chuckled, reminded that even their almighty class representative could seem normal sometimes. She offered to heal any discomfort he felt. Thomas cut in, complaining about his stiff back and shoulders, angling for treatment. Chelsea smacked him on the back for being silly, and after dealing with him, she asked Leo about his summoning practice field. She'd heard from Tade that he hardly showed up at the summoning grounds. In truth, Leo preferred training in secret. It suited him to stay unseen. Chelsea asked what rank he aimed for next, and naturally he claimed he would target first place. On the day of the summoning practical exam, faculty and upperclassmen gathered to observe the highlight of the semester, the summoned creature race. Rumba Tess, a third year from the summoning department, would provide live commentary. Celia turned to Riss Zerdinger, the student council president, asking if this really qualified as an exam. He then explained that the creature race was a proud tradition and a major showcase between departments. However, Thomas saw it as another golden opportunity for profit and opened his popcorn and cola stand once again, selling non-stop even before the race began. The audience roared with excitement, contrasting the nervous silence on stage. The summoning freshmen were tense, the cheers doing little to ease their nerves. The top contenders, Leo, Chen Shaw, Eliza, and Sen Lu, focused intently. Eliza, the silver-haired prodigy from a northern summoner hero family, approached Leo to praise his night studies performance. She questioned whether he was ready for the summoning race because she had never seen him at group training, and others echoed her doubts, urging him to step aside if he wasn't fully committed. Tade attempted to calm the group, but tempers flared. The critics accused Leo of disrespecting the summoning class, and Chen Shaw sensed the tension rising. Sen Lu, a freshman from the east, told her that with her solid night exam scores, she didn't need to push herself so hard. But before the situation could escalate further, Warraden Titan of the southern continent stepped forward to end the bickering. He declared that those who wanted to argue over training should do it elsewhere. Sen Lu bristled at Warraden's comment, accusing him of skipping taming sessions too. Warraden scoffed, saying he found basic drills a waste of time because he's not an idiot, unlike him. Sen Lu tried to punch him, but Leo intervened, stopping the fight and warning that any pre-race scuffle would mean disqualification. That was enough to cool the hotheads down. Tade apologized to Leo, explaining that the summoning department had a wide skill gap. However, Leo and Chen Shaw weren't full summoning majors, yet they still ranked so high. Resentment brewed. From a distance, a hooded figure watched ominously, focused intently on the race. Dark energy pulsed around him, locked onto a single target, Senator Liu. That energy hinted at violence, even death. Before the race began, Rumba Tess explained the rules. Only summoning techniques were allowed, and dual majors couldn't use aura or magic. Racers had to tame a griffin, soar through the island of summons, loop around Silent Lake, and then return to the academy. The contenders lined up. Miss Yura urged her class to stay calm, reminding them that panic would ruin everything. Ironically, her warning only increased their anxiety. At her signal, the race began. Most contestants dashed toward the griffin stables, but some fired elemental spells, directly at Leo and Warraden. Even the commentator was stunned by the underhanded move. Leo told Tade to go on without him, and Tade obeyed. The audience erupted in outrage at the unfair attack. Leo had long known he was disliked, but not to this extent. Warraden effortlessly neutralized the spells and calmly approached the stables, breaking a griffin and taking flight. He offered Leo help, but Leo refused. This petty sabotage posed no real threat. With Warraden airborne, Leo remained behind. Chelsea looked on, worried. Miss Yura frowned, realizing just how deeply divided her students were. She had assumed Leo lacked spirit arts, but she was wrong. A radiant light burst from Leo as he calmly chanted an ancient summoning incantation. Elemental spirits answered. Yura wondered how he could be so fluent in spirit language because few today could even grasp a line of the old spirit tongue, let alone speak it fluently. Leo Plove continued to astonish. She watched his determined expression and sighed with relief. She now knew she had to recruit him into summoning full-time. Though Leo had fallen behind, he had not been defeated. The troublemakers who had ensnared Leo and Warraden boasted it was certain Leo would end in last place. However, Eliza insisted she didn't need cheap tricks to defeat her rivals. She worried how these antics would harm the summoning class's reputation. With no more patience for foolishness, Eliza accelerated, warning her classmates to think before acting next time. Sen Lu fumed at her righteous tone. Ranking behind Eliza still seemed within reach, until a griffin suddenly blitzed past him. Riding with effortless control, Chen Xia surged forward, her style more akin to surfing than riding. Chen's approach, while unconventional, proved devastatingly effective. Even without soul energy to empower her griffin, her velocity surpassed all others. Spooked by her arrival, Sen Lu's group turned their aggression toward an eastern contender. One girl summoned a light spirit, thrusting it forward as a projectile. Spotting the oncoming strike, Chen slid across one of her griffin's wings, balancing with acrobatic grace. As the spirit drew near, she vaulted into the air and executed a flawless mid-air flip, sailing above the blast. The watchers, many unseasoned in real combat, were utterly stunned. Upon landing, Chen coiled herself like a spring and launched toward the spirit wielder, her momentum concentrated into a devastating kick. The girl tumbled from her mount, shrieking claims of foul play. But Chen had used no aura, only pure martial skill. With the threat neutralized, she resumed her path, sparing Sen Lu a brief glance in passing. They were acquaintances from the same region. He returned a cold warning, claiming that defying him would lead to regret. But both sensed a new threat approaching. Someone furious over the earlier sabotage. Suddenly, the sky ignited in a blaze of red as Warraden erupted with terrifying spirit power, reducing griffins to ash midair. Furious over the starting line ambush, he exacted ruthless vengeance, turning the air into a furnace. Panicked, the instigators fled, but Warraden pursued with grim resolve. One by one, griffins fell under his spell, disqualifying their riders. Back at the start, the announcer focused on Leo's struggle. Freed from the spirit lock, he now faced the challenge of taming the last griffin. The creature bore a fresh wound on its left wing, sabotage. Such cruelty had no place among heroes. Leo took the reins, but the griffin reared in panic. Most knew it was dangerous to mount such a beast without its trust. He understood the griffin's fear and pain. Locking eyes with the creature, Leo projected silent dominance. When he commanded it to kneel, it reluctantly obeyed. Gently, he removed the fragments from its wing and vaulted into the saddle. He guided the wounded beast from the stables, speeding toward the race. Spectators noted the injury, and the announcer mused that the first year might finish last. But Leo, sensing the griffin's torment, honored their pact. He summoned his contracted soul beast, Fiora the Phoenix. The tiny chick appeared and, on command, engulfed the griffin's wing in curative phoenix flame. The creature resisted, confused by the unfamiliar warmth. Celia watched, puzzled by the flame's nature. Her brother noted it was neither aura-based nor a typical fire, something rarer. Ahead, the real race raged. Most troublemakers were injured, fleeing Warraden. But the contest had just begun. Enveloped in phoenix fire, Leo's griffin surged higher and faster, closing the gap. As he prepared to seize victory, a massive dragon appeared overhead. To most, it was a mythic beast. But Leo recognized it, a Fafnir. It wasn't imagination, it was real. Minutes earlier, Eliza had broken away from the front to intercept Warraden. Realizing he had to be stopped, she dodged his explosive flame strike, discovering he fused wind and fire spirits. Undaunted, Eliza, a prodigy of a summoning lineage, relied on agility. Warraden changed tactics, conjuring elemental icicles. Eliza's griffin erupted in flame, countering every strike. The two clashed in a fiery aerial ballet, drawing awe from the crowd. Amid this chaos, Chen advanced, until Eliza snagged her with an enchanted rope. Bound mid-flight, Chen saw a flicker of flame. Disaster loomed. With desperate force, she and her griffin broke free, vanishing into safety. As soon as Warriden's spirits fused, another colossal detonation lit up the sky. Still airborne, Chen Sha tore through Eliza's enchanted rope and summoned her griffin in perfect synchrony. With a surge of tactical brilliance, she reclaimed the lead. Rather than fear, she felt an electrifying thrill at witnessing the summoning department's elite in action. But up ahead, the silhouette of a strange airborne beast caught her eye, dark and winged, like a black wyvern. Confusion overtook her when she realized the creature wasn't just any wyvern. Atop it rode Sen Lu, whose mind teetered on the edge of madness. Hatred consumed him, and murderous impulses flooded his thoughts. Chen Sha, witnessing his state, tried to warn him that riding anything other than a griffin was against race regulations. But Sen Lu no longer cared. His contempt for the elite had spiraled into a rabid obsession. Eliza and Warrieden soon caught up, both sensing the strange and ominous aura. With her deep knowledge of monsters, Eliza instantly recognized that the creature was no mere wyvern. It was something far worse. By then, Leo closed the gap on his blazing griffin, its speed enhanced by phoenix flames. Sen Lu, unfazed by the presence of 3 top-tier prodigies, seemed eager for confrontation. Leo questioned aloud where the child had acquired the lizard, his voice cold and cutting. Sen Lu sneered, mistaking Leo's concern for jealousy. He proudly declared that he had bound the beast with raw summoning talent, oblivious to the truth. Leo, however, recognized the creature instantly. It was not a wyvern, but a Fafnir, a beast once wielded by the magicians of Tartarus. Supposedly extinct, this demon had been eradicated during the Age of Calamity. Suddenly, the Fafnir launched a devastating laser breath. Leo and Warrieden barely dodged its blistering path, while Eliza twisted through the air to avoid destruction. But none of them were the intended target. The beam cut through the sky toward Chen Sha. Leo cried out a warning, but she was too slow to react. Her shield only half formed before the beam shattered it completely. Her griffin collapsed, wounded and unconscious, sending both rider and beast plummeting. Leo acted without hesitation, using his enhanced speed to intercept Chen Sha mid-fall. His focus narrowed to a single goal, getting her to safety. He instructed Warrieden and Eliza to land. Trusting his instincts, they obeyed. Above them, Sen Lu's thoughts twisted further. The power of dominance from above fed something dark within him. The announcer's devices lost track of the top racers, leaving only the image of Sen Lu on his monstrous steed as he attacked the department's finest. Miss Yura burst into the announcer's booth, pushing the commentator aside. She seized the microphone, issuing urgent orders for professors and assistants to prepare additional mounts for rescue. The race was halted, now a matter of life and death. Professors Len Horace and Sejin arrived, bewildered. Miss Yura explained. A student had bound a high-tier demonic beast and lost control. Professor Harlan Edmund appeared, speculating that another force might be manipulating the creature. He took command, instructing Yura to stop or apprehend Sen Lu while others protected the students. Professors Sejin and Edmund, despite their differences, quickly agreed. Defending their students took priority over old rivalries. Meanwhile, Leo found a secluded spot to lay Chen Sha down and assess her condition. Eliza and Warrieden landed beside him, their relief short-lived. The Fafnir descended with its gaze predatory. Sen Lu, now completely deranged, mistook Leo's cautious stance for cowardice. Leo tried to warn him that he was riding a Fafnir, not a wyvern, but the boy didn't listen. A legendary image of Kyle seemed to overlay Leo as he stepped forward. He recalled the era when he had slain creatures like this without mercy. Once Kyle, now Leo, was no longer a mere student. He had returned to end the threat of the Fafnir once again. Sen Lu, driven by his inferiority complex, ordered the Fafnir to attack. Just before the laser could strike, a massive stone hand burst from the earth. A golem rose and intercepted the beam, shielding the trio. Warrieden's magic had arrived in time. Eliza quickly joined, forming a plan with Warrieden and Leo. The golem wouldn't last long. They had to strike swiftly. Watching Warrieden and Eliza argue amid crisis made Leo smile wryly. Heroes, as ever, were eccentric. As the golem crumbled, they vanished from sight. Eliza initiated the attack with her enchanted rope, which snaked toward Sen Lu. At the same time, Warrieden placed explosive charges and ignited them. Flames spread across the Fafnir's hide. Then, Leo moved. He darted through the smoke, grabbed Sen Lu by the hair, and delivered a brutal kick, nearly knocking him off the beast. But it was already too late. Something had taken hold of the boy, an ancient presence. The entity thanked Leo for freeing its vessel. It now had full control. The possessed child hauled Leo into the air atop the Fafnir. It mocked him, asking if he finally felt fear. Leo's response was a piercing strike at the handler's spirit. No one had ever so confidently exposed the demon's identity. Alarmed, the handler launched Leo through the sky with advanced magic. As he plummeted, Leo summoned Fiora. Phoenix flames curled above as Leo conjured a fire orb. Memories of his former life surged. He had once been Kyle, the all-around hero who mastered nothing yet wielded everything. Merging aura, magic, and spiritual power, he unleashed a power unseen in ages. The chick vanished, replaced by a radiant teenage phoenix. With scarlet plumage and majestic wings, she caught Leo in her talons. The Fafnir recoiled at her presence. The handler demanded to know Leo's identity, but Leo simply asked how Senlu had summoned the beast. The fight resumed. Leo raised his sword, channeling phoenix fire into its blade. A colossal clash of laser and flame erupted. The Fafnir wavered midair, its soul energy faltering. Leo roared, pouring everything he had into the final strike. Flames pierced the demon's body, bursting from within. The handler was consumed, his possession shattered. Leo, exhausted, thanked Fiora as she began to revert, her transformation ending. Leo started to fall again. Meanwhile, the real handler had already been ambushed by Sejin and Edmund. The duo crushed the handler with a devastating gravitational magic. They were ready to finish him off, but the handler, who seemed to know who they were, had other plans. He promised to meet them again before disappearing out of sight. This encounter made Sejin and Edmund realize that Lumerian Academy might not be safe any longer. At the other end, while falling to his death, Leo urged Fiora to return to the summon realm, but the chick was passed out and couldn't hear him. Luckily, before he hit the ground, a scaled beast intercepted him. Riding the wyvern was Miss Yura, and relief etched across her face as they landed safely. Elsewhere, deep in a forest cave, the real beast handler, Senator Luz Corruptor, fumed. His master, observing the failure, glared with disdain. The handler insisted Leo was no ordinary student. Mention of the phoenix stirred his master's interest, but the revelation that Leo knew his identity sparked unease. With a sinister grin, the overseer vowed to watch this hero closely. At Lumerian Academy, the summoning midterm was cancelled. Senlu's mind had broken completely. The boy did not survive. Rumors circulated, but under Miss Yura's orders, the official explanation was a rogue wyvern. Meanwhile, Leo prepared for his next challenge, the magic class practical exam. Professor Len Horace stood at the podium, solemnly welcoming the class. Thomas and Chelsea spotted Chloe enter, disheveled and sleepless. Leo followed, also noticing her condition. Once everyone had arrived, Len spoke gravely. The exam would be no easy feat. Each student had to demonstrate a unique creation in their personal style. To evaluate them, he introduced 3 notable alumni: the sharp-tongued Rielda Fedney, the hardy Eidmon Slack, and the cheerful Shin Hudges. Their presence lifted spirits, and Thomas hoped the guest judges might be lenient. First up was Liana. With glowing confidence, she launched a spectacular light and fire display. But Shin dismissed it as a basic laser spell. Despite her flair, the judges gave her a C-. One by one, students presented their magic, only to receive similarly low marks. A few stood out. Thomas earned a B+ for his metal manipulation, and Chelsea claimed the highest score for her wind magic. Yet the judges remained unimpressed, waiting for something truly exceptional. They knew the final 3 students were the real prodigies. Among them was Abad Llewellyn, Chelsea's brother. The girls swooned, but Abad focused on theory over flair. He introduced his custom spell, Tempest. His preparation had been intense, involving his entire family to contain its force. With concentration, he hovered above the stage. The winds responded, converging into a ferocious storm. Even the protective barrier struggled to contain it. In a tense moment, the storm lifted a small creature skyward. Panic gripped Abad, but in that desperation, he found control. His will subdued the tempest, showcasing not just power, but heart. He might just be the best hero candidate, aside from one. Up next was Leo, and his concept was simple yet revolutionary. He proposed a high sorcery method to streamline and elevate the entire casting process. Upon hearing his theory, the judges responded with a mix of skepticism and awe. They pressed him to confirm whether he truly intended to devise an entirely new casting system. Although the veteran mages found the notion implausible, they listened attentively. Professor Len Horace, eyes gleaming, appeared eager to make Leo his personal apprentice. Eidmon Slack, unimpressed, dismissed Leo's presentation as nonsense. He had come expecting solid magical theory, not fantasy. Despite Slack's disapproval, Professor Horace encouraged Leo to thoroughly document his theoretical system. With such support, the judges agreed to remain open-minded. Leo picked up a piece of chalk and began writing on the board, the room falling silent for the sound of chalk striking slate. Rilda Fedni observed that only one mage in history had ever employed a completely different high sorcery method. Leo acknowledged this calmly. Luna, the poet of the stars, had achieved that feat. Yet Leo dismissed comparisons, explaining he never aspired to rival her. One didn't need to be a prodigy to create a new casting framework. All he asked was for the judges to review his notes. To their astonishment, every line of Leo's theory appeared flawless. He wasn't fabricating a show. His system, as written, could theoretically channel any elemental magic without drawbacks. Chelsea, usually confident in her analytical ability, couldn't comprehend Leo's notes, while Thomas gave up entirely. Meanwhile, Chloe never took her eyes off her rival, understanding Leo's brilliance to some degree. They asked him why he had created such a system. His answer was clear. He desired the freedom to wield all forms of magic. Slack's skepticism faded, replaced by a dawning curiosity. He began to understand the professor's belief in the uniqueness of this year's students. When asked the name of his system, Leo raised a hand and summoned a glowing thread of mana that coalesced into a radiant orb. He called it the Bible. Rilda was stunned. That name echoed a mythical hero, Kyle. She now looked forward to what Leo might accomplish, wondering if he might validate Kyle's legend. Following a brief discussion, the judges handed their scorecards to Professor Horace, who announced with a grin that Leo had earned an A+. As Leo returned to his seat, he reflected on how he had never completed this system in his previous life as Kyle. Now, he would. The final student to present was Chloe Muller. Leo noticed her unease and asked if she was all right. She didn't respond, and stepped onto the stage with an air of resolve. The judges, aware she was the top student in the magic division, held high expectations. Chloe declared she had created an imperishable. A scarlet flame blazed in her palm, an unusual sight, given her primary affinity was ice. Using the opposite element seemed irrational, perhaps even foolish. Her flame appeared ordinary, disappointing the judges who had just witnessed Leo's groundbreaking theory. Then, she conjured water and let it fall like a waterfall upon the flame. It should have been extinguished, but it continued to burn. Abad was stunned. Leo felt something ominous stir. Chloe claimed the flame had been granted permanence. It would burn forever unless she dispelled it herself. She did just that, snuffing it out and then explaining the spell's logic on the board. The basic principle of magic dictated that without mana, a spell would vanish. Yet Chloe's spell defied this rule. Her classmates watched in disbelief. She named her high sorcery the unquenchable flame. Only Leo remained doubtful. Not even Luna had created a truly immortal flame. He suspected only one being had ever done so, Erebus. The exams have concluded. Leo tried to find Chloe, but she had returned to her dorm, exhausted. She hadn't rested since the exams were announced. Celia mentioned her concern. Chloe had grown tense lately and was rumored to be mingling with troublemakers from the Magic Studies group. Leo, pondering this, returned to the lecture hall and summoned Fiora, who appeared in her phoenix chick form. Delighted, she chirped beside him. But Leo had also summoned another, Farina, Fiora's mother and guardian phoenix. The embodiment of fire, Farina emerged in a swirl of flame. With regal poise, she asked why Leo had summoned her. He inquired why she remained at Lumerian Academy for so long, given the phoenix's inherent opposition to demonic beasts. Farina revealed that 5 years ago, Lumerian had suffered a deadly assault. 2 students and 3 staff members had perished. At the headmaster's request, she was tasked with investigating the perpetrators, who remained unidentified. Leo asked if she suspected Tartarus, a sinister group. Farina fell silent, clearly harboring distrust but revealing little. Accepting her silence, Leo asked her to inform the headmaster that Senlu might not be the only student swayed by Tartarus. The next day, the practical exam in heroics and combat studies began. Professor Edmund, relaxed as always, delegated the explanation to class representative Leo. The students would reenact the Chad murderers incident, a grim chapter from 3 decades ago when Lumerian students were ambushed by Tartarus in Chad Forest. The objective: rescue wounded allies, defeat beasts, and assist a second-year student, Professor Albie, within the scenario. Failure to demonstrate heroic potential meant expulsion. Teams were randomly assigned. When Leo's number was called, he was placed in Team 11, the last team. After all students have been assigned to their respective teams, the mission kicks off. Team 1 containing Chelsea and Celia were starting off and a feeling of assurance bloomed within Chelsea. As soon as Professor Albie activated the simulation, they dashed in, hoping to complete their objectives swiftly. Watching from the sidelines, Sejin and Edmund resumed their rivalry, each complimenting the students from their class. Just then, Headmaster Kalyan entered hoping to watch how much the first graders had grown. Kalyan apologized to Albie for reenacting his painful memory, but Albie claimed not to mind because he had promised not to ever forget the incident. Time flew by and all the teams completed their objectives, with each team using different strategies and methods. Kalyan was really impressed by the first graders, but the most promising one, Leo, hadn't gone through the process just yet. Speaking of the devil, it was finally Leo's turn and he teamed up with Chloe, whose face showed great determination. Then, Albie resumed the simulation, but as the magic activated, something went wrong. The light intensified unnaturally. When it faded, only Leo and Chloe had been transported. The rest of their team remained behind. The judges reacted with alarm. Professor Albie declared that the simulation was corrupted and they had to stop the exam immediately. Kalyan quickly caught on to the reason, which was because Leo and Chloe had been transported by a hero dungeon call. A red alert screen flickered into view. Leo tried to contact help through his powers but received no reply. They were cut off. Chloe remained hopeful, expecting the professors to retrieve them, but Leo knew better. If rescue were possible, it would have come already. Realizing the truth, Leo turned to Chloe and explained that only the two of them could clear the dungeon. He reminded her that this forest had taken lives even 30 years ago. Now, it was their turn to survive. Leo declared they had to face the threat together if they wanted to survive. Chloe cried out, her voice trembling with realization. Tartarus, the villain, must have orchestrated this nightmare to ensnare rising young heroes like them. Gripped by fear, she screamed that the entire forest was likely a trap. Her panic was unmistakable. Leo stepped in gently, trying to steady her. He reminded Chloe that she held the title of the strongest student in their year, trying to spark her confidence. Offering his hand, he reassured her that they could succeed if they fought together. Chloe, inwardly astounded by Leo's composure, realized how far she had to go to match his calm in crisis. Buoyed slightly by his words, she asked if he had a plan. Leo laid it out clearly. There were two objectives in this dungeon, which eerily mirrored the infamous Chad incident: rescue the trapped first-year students and ensure their safety until the dungeon concluded. Their first move was to seek reinforcements. He pointed to footprints that hinted others might be nearby. Chloe was skeptical. How could anyone help when this dungeon was sealed off from the outside? Leo explained they weren't alone. Other students were trapped here too, possibly scattered throughout the forest. That thought gave Chloe hope. Unexpectedly, Leo crouched and offered her his back. She flushed, stunned. He insisted she ride piggyback. Her speed wasn't enough as a mage. They had to hurry. Reluctantly, she agreed. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest grew darker, more menacing. Elsewhere, in a hidden lair filled with warped green screens, a figure watched. Only twisted horns were visible at first. Then he appeared, Chubaran, a grotesque demon in service to Tartarus. He lounged lazily, smirking as his sinister game began. On one screen, he saw Leo carrying Chloe at high speed. He muttered, intrigued by the appearance of a potential rescue team. Another monitor displayed 4 students, the ones Leo was racing to reach. With a sneer, Chubaran dismissed them as irrelevant cadets. His grin widened, eyes gleaming with malicious glee. He was ready to hunt. Leo raced through the forest, red and blue energy swirling around him as he activated a borrowed skill. The air pulsed with power as he invoked supersensitivity, sharpening his senses to superhuman levels. Everything became a blur. He detected danger ahead, an orc ambush. Without slowing, he launched Chloe into the air, setting her up to strike. She didn't hesitate. Spinning mid-air, she summoned a barrage of ice shards that rained down on the orcs, piercing them with icy precision. The creatures fell, crumbling under her magic. But Chloe's alarm rose again. An orc leader remained, raising a horn to summon reinforcements. Before the horn could sound, a swift slash of energy severed it. Leo landed beside her, sword drawn, having struck the final blow. Chloe was stunned by his speed. She felt dwarfed by his ability, unsure she could ever catch up, but there was no time for reflection. Using his enhanced senses, Leo pinpointed their friends in a clearing below, surrounded by shadowy demons. He ordered Chloe to cover him and launched from a magic circle straight into the battle. Down below, Alia, bathed in light magic, warned her friends as Chubaran struck. But Leo intercepted the attack, his glowing sword clashing with Chubaran's blow. The demon snarled, shocked that Leo had stopped him. Alia and the others gaped in disbelief as Leo stood protectively before them. Chubaran screeched from a magic circle and unleashed a torrent of leech-like creatures. Leo reacted instantly, incinerating them in a wave of fire. Inspired, Alia raised her staff, summoning a celestial beam that obliterated the remaining monsters. Chloe watched in awe. Alia wielded rare sorcery of the stars magic. As calm briefly returned, Alia thanked Leo and Chloe for their timely rescue. Chloe asked for a moment alone with Leo. Taking him aside, she revealed a critical truth. Alia's full name was Alia Giron. Leo's expression shifted in recognition. Chloe explained that Alia was the younger sister of their teacher, Professor Albie, who had died here 3 decades ago. The party they had just saved was meant to perish in this very dungeon, recorded in hero history as martyrs of the Chad incident. Their fate was supposed to be sealed. Leo considered her words quietly. He acknowledged the past, but he refused to let it dictate the present. These people were alive now, and they had a chance. Chloe, overwhelmed, argued desperately. History couldn't be changed. She broke down in tears, questioning if Leo was just a naive hero. Placing a hand on her shoulder, Leo spoke gently. She was a hero candidate, too. Facing the impossible wasn't foolish, it was necessary. His words left her stunned, and a quiet resolve returned to her expression. Leo then pointed out something crucial. History had already been altered. The forest had felt wrong from the start. Chloe gasped as the implications sank in. Meanwhile, Alia smiled faintly, unaware of her recorded fate. Chloe, voice trembling, said she would follow Leo's decision. A hidden presence stirred, its voice laced with malice. It questioned if Leo had reached this point without waiting for its arrival. It held a glowing dark book, hinting that a larger plan was in motion. A faded notice declared Alia's team missing, presumed lost. In the forest, Alia's friends began to doubt. Tayad whispered that the rescuers could be part of a trap. Dina agreed. Vilak voiced the same suspicion. But Alia shut them down, reminding them that Leo and Chloe had fought alongside them. Quietly, she admitted that Leo seemed admirable. Her friends were shocked by her words. As they teased her, Leo stepped forward and took command. He warned them of a terrifying truth. A knight-ranked demon was after Alia's group specifically. The group paled. Such demons rivaled entire armies. Leo's strategy was simple: avoid confrontation. Survival came first. Alia, watching him lead, saw echoes of her brother in him. Leo asked if everyone was ready. The group nodded. Without delay, he ordered them to move out. They fled through the dark forest, urgency in every step. Alia and Chloe ran side by side, determination etched into their expressions. The earlier panic had evolved into hardened resolve. Far away, the Grand Library at Lumerini Academy was in chaos. Professors Sejin and Edmund scoured the archives for answers. Headmaster Kalyan spoke with Professor Giron, who confirmed that the dungeon couldn't be entered while occupied, meaning Leo and Chloe were still inside. Edmund noted that 3 hours had passed. If a knight had fallen in the hero world, the danger was escalating. Kalyan asked when Albie had defeated Chubaran in the past. Giron recalled it was near midnight. They feared relying on history might be their only option. Suddenly, Nella burst into the room, breathless with a new discovery. He revealed who sold a forbidden item to Senlu, a lead that traced back to Tartarus. The weight of the truth hit Kalyan, leaving him speechless. Giron's eyes flared behind his glasses, golden light burning with fury at the name that had haunted him for decades. Tartarus had returned. Headmaster Kalyan placed a calming hand on Professor Giron's trembling shoulder, urging his distressed colleague to regain composure despite the devastating news. Gritting his teeth, Professor Giron announced he needed a moment outside, overwhelmed by the emotions tied to his sister's fate. As he exited, Nella watched silently, understanding all too well that the professor's reaction stemmed from the unresolved grief surrounding Ali's mysterious disappearance 3 decades earlier. Nella reflected on Albie Giron's legacy, a hero driven by hatred for demons, and how his sister had vanished without a trace. The pain Professor Giron carried now made perfect sense. Shifting the focus, Headmaster Kalyan sternly pressed Nella for the identity of the person who had sold the catalyst to Senlu. In response, Nella presented a report. The seller was a black market dealer, a newcomer to Lumarine City this year, already dangerously popular among first-year students. Reading the report, Kalyan's expression grew grim. He asked the chilling question: had a Tartarus spy infiltrated Lumarine itself? Nella quickly clarified that while the dealer hadn't worked directly with Tartarus, evidence suggested that the enemy faction had deliberately leaked hazardous artifacts through him. Kalyan absorbed this revelation, pondering what twisted goal Tartarus might be pursuing by using students as pawns. Examining the dealer's records more closely, his eyes widened in shock. Among the items distributed, one stood out: a cursed spellbook linked directly to Chloe Muller, who was now trapped inside the dungeon. Realization struck like lightning. Kalyan snapped his gaze upward and immediately instructed Nella to inform Professor Len of this critical discovery. Once Nella departed, the headmaster stood alone, gazing down at his scarred hand. His instinct screamed a silent alarm. Years of surviving countless deadly encounters had sharpened his senses, and now they warned him that the threat wasn't somewhere far off. It was near, very near, perhaps already within the academy. Within the dungeon, Leo, Chloe, and Alia continued their desperate escape. Leo's heightened senses flared. Like the headmaster, he too felt a rapidly approaching danger. The sharp clangs of battle rang nearby as more monsters appeared in pursuit. They cut down the grotesque goblin-like creatures that blocked their path. Leo's blazing sword cleaved through enemies with brutal precision, his red eyes narrowed in focus. The others were clearly exhausted, their breaths ragged. Even Leo, having pushed his super-sensitivity for too long, was nearing his limit. He announced a quick rest. In a small clearing, the students slumped against trees, trying to recover. Chloe stood apart, eyes locked on the dark spell book she had acquired, her face etched with seriousness. Alia noticed and approached, curious. When Chloe looked up, surprised, Alia asked an unexpected question: were she and Leo lovers? Caught off guard, Chloe flustered and denied it, but Alia playfully teased her, noting the reaction said otherwise. Chloe turned away, speechless, possibly pondering the truth of the question. To Chloe, Alia seemed like any other student, despite being from a different era. When Chloe turned the question back, asking if Alia had feelings for Leo, Alia hesitated. Then, smiling brightly, she admitted her heart raced around him. Chloe, thoughtful, remarked that such feelings had surfaced quickly. She reflected on Leo's courage and skill through Alia's eyes, perhaps the very traits that had sparked her own admiration. Alia clarified she wasn't sure it was love, comparing the feeling to how she admired her brother, Albie. She confessed to once hating him due to an inferiority complex. He always succeeded with ease while she struggled. Her jealousy had eventually shifted into deep admiration. Laughing sheepishly, she revealed she had failed Lumerini Academy's entrance exam twice. Despite her fame as a prodigy, Chloe listened in silence. When Alia shared that her brother had created the foundation of her magic, Chloe seemed moved. She repeated the phrase, a target of admiration, under her breath, her gaze drifting toward Leo. Perhaps, for her, he was becoming just that. Suddenly, Leo's head snapped up. A sense of dread pierced the moment. He ordered everyone to stand. The mood turned grim as the forest darkened with ominous energy. Tayad and Dina leapt to their feet, weapons drawn. As Leo declared escape was no longer possible, a monstrous foot crashed into the clearing, splitting the ground. A deep, menacing voice boomed. He had found them. The night-rank demon, Chubaran, emerged, radiating fury. He roared incomprehensibly, his rage fixed solely on Leo. Leo dodged the first attack, startled by Chubaran's words. The demon hadn't come for Alia's historically doomed group, but for him. He wasn't just a hero seed, he was the seed of a great hero. As Chubaran charged again, Chloe dropped into a stance. Ice magic erupted, a shimmering wall shielding Leo just in time. Seizing the moment, Leo swung his flaming sword, unleashing a fiery arc. It struck the demon squarely. From the smoke, Chubaran emerged grinning, unharmed. Chloe stared in disbelief as a gash in his neck sealed itself grotesquely. The demon's regeneration was near instantaneous. A student gasped, horrified. Leo ordered a tactical retreat. Chubaran began summoning a void sphere, an ability that nullified attacks. Leo shouted that it wasn't unbeatable, noting Chubaran wasn't the caster and thus must have limits. The demon summoned a massive axe forged from bone, adorned with a skull. He mocked Leo, asking if a mere remnant of a great hero believed he could win. Leo replied with resolve, shouting that perhaps a new great hero would be born that day. Leo surged forward with blazing fury. Tayad, Dina, and Bilak followed, coordinating their strike. Alia channeled light magic, her staff bursting with golden energy. She unleashed a beam of sorcery from the stars, striking Chubaran head-on. The demon growled, recognizing the celestial magic. The battle exploded into chaos. Ice, runes, swords, and light clashing against darkness. Chubaran countered with a brutal downward strike, his bone weapon smashing into the ground and sending a shockwave of dark energy outward. Leo shouted for the others to dodge. The battle against the indomitable demon now fully underway. Dina managed a partial block, but Bilak took the brunt of the blow, crying out as the demonic energy slammed into him. Leo moved in an instant, weaving through the chaos to reach his injured friend. He pulled Bilak to safety and gently set him down behind a hastily formed ice barrier. Chloe and Alia joined him as the battle paused briefly, tension thick in the air. Alia rushed to check on the wounded, her expression pale with concern. She asked if those caught in the shockwave were all right. Dina affirmed she could continue, but Bilak had sustained serious injuries. Leo assured her that his internal organs were intact and urged her to use her aura to stop the bleeding. Leo turned to Chloe. They needed one powerful strike to turn the tide. Chloe, her expression grim, nodded and asked Leo to buy her some time. Without hesitation, Leo summoned several energy duplicates of himself, sending them to distract the formidable knight-rank demon. While the clones darted around the creature, Chloe took cover and reached into her bag, retrieving a sinister black spell book. She needed a spell strong enough to counter the demon's void curse. As she opened the book, ominous red energy flared to life, forbidden symbols swirling around its pages. Chloe stared at the glowing script, torn between caution and urgency, then began casting the forbidden spell. The cavern shook from the ongoing battle. Tayad and Dina, dusty and wide-eyed, watched in awe as the students fought with desperate resolve. Alia knelt by Bilak, glancing anxiously at the chaos as she tended to him. Leo and his duplicates zipped around Chubaran, swords flashing. The demon roared, fangs bared, swiping aggressively at the relentless illusions. Leo struck with a glowing sword, landing a clean hit that sent Chubaran stumbling backward. Tayad, impressed, asked Dina if they would ever be that strong. Dina replied thoughtfully, her mind on the effort still needed. Alia studied Leo's fighting style. Something about his energy felt familiar. Confused, she wondered who this skilled warrior could be. Then her eyes widened in astonishment. Floating above them, Chloe stood in a ring of dark purple magic, spellbook in hand, her eyes glowing an intense red. The air around her shimmered with power. She warned Leo to move, giving no guarantee he'd survive her next attack. Red sparks flared as she unleashed her spell. A colossal beam of black and red fire roared toward Chubaran, engulfing him completely. Leo's eyes widened. This wasn't her usual ice magic. It was something far more dangerous. Chubaran screamed, the dark fire consuming him. Chloe declared it her inextinguishable flame, vowing to incinerate him for eternity. Inside the flames, Chubaran panicked as they turned pitch black. Leo's expression shifted to horror. He shouted at Chloe to stop. Gripping his sword, now pulsing with dark energy, he charged forward. Chloe laughed coldly, determined to push the spell further. Thinking fast, Leo slammed his sword's hilt into the ground, unleashing a pulse to interrupt her casting. He leapt up, reached her in a blink, and struck the spellbook from her hands. It spun through the air as she cried out in surprise. Her staff slipped from her grasp as Leo landed beside her and steadied her. The inferno began to fade. Chloe, dizzy, touched her head. Leo asked her if that fire was truly her own. Avoiding his gaze, she admitted it wasn't. She had taken the spell from the book, unaware of its full power. A memory sparked in Leo's mind, a shadowy hand with a staff. Dread settled in. It was the flame of Erebus. The fire vanished. Chubaran, battered but alive, rose from the embers. Leo told Chloe the truth. The spell she used was black magic. Shocked, she asked if he was certain. He confirmed it, pointing to the spellbook now looking more ominous than ever. Guilt washed over her. She questioned whether she deserved to call herself a hero. Leo grabbed her shoulder and brought her back to focus. He explained the demon's void curse wasn't seen this time. It had likely been used on Alia's group earlier. He pointed at Tayad, helping Bilak, and reminded Chloe that their classmates had fought bravely despite their fear. Alia and Dina's determined faces echoed that sentiment. Leo pushed Chloe to remember Lumarine Academy's core teaching. Before she could respond, Alia stood up with fire in her eyes and declared the lesson they all shared, to push past and go beyond. The words struck home. Chloe looked at Leo. Understanding bloomed between them. Everything clicked. Chloe realized she had always admired Leo. It was never envy, just pure admiration. Alia stepped forward and offered Chloe her staff, a gesture of trust. She told Chloe she was counting on her now. Inspired, Chloe grabbed the staff. Ice energy swirled around her as she vowed to push beyond her limits, just like everyone else. Leo smiled. Her resolve gave him strength. He stepped forward, red eyes glowing, starry symbols lighting the air. Chloe, now calm and resolute, stood tall. Together, they prepared to end the fight. Leo's past self shimmered in his reflection. Chubaran hesitated, recognizing the strength in the boy before him. Then, with a roar, the demon lunged. His massive claw met Leo's blade in a violent explosion of light and sparks. The impact cracked the earth beneath them. Leo held firm, then suddenly gathered energy in his free hand. With a glowing fist, he struck Chubaran's jaw. The demon flew backward, stunned. Leo panted, sword in hand, declaring the end of the battle, but Chuberin stood tall, sneering. He dismissed Leo as merely a seed of a hero. The air turned cold, a snowflake drifted down, Chloe's magic circle flared high above. She called out to Chuberin. This was the end. Her staff glowed with finality. Leo had given her the time she needed. She unleashed her spell. Ice exploded outward, glaciers erupted, freezing the battlefield. Chloe soared, radiant in her icy storm. Blue magic circled her like a halo. The dungeon transformed, fire replaced by crystalline frost. Sharp pillars of ice turned the cavern into a wintry fortress beneath the moonlight. Chloe called the spell Ice World. Chuberin, caught off guard, was sealed within a towering tomb of shimmering ice. His monstrous form is visible beneath the frozen surface. Leo, breath ragged, watched snowflakes fall, his red eyes fixed on the entombed demon. The fight was over. Leo stood before the massive ice tomb, its surface shimmering under the cold light. He reached out with caution, fingertips brushing the frozen barrier imprisoning the demon Chuberin. A soft crack formed as he subtly tested the structure Chloe had conjured. His sword remained drawn, ready for anything, his weary face smudged with ash from battle, but his eyes were sharp and unwavering. The scale of the frozen construct was immense, a testament to Chloe's extraordinary magical output. At his feet lay a black spellbook, pulsing ominously with a sinister purple glow. A chilling reminder of the forbidden magic Chloe had dared to touch. Without hesitation, Leo raised his blade, now glowing with red energy, and brought it down upon the book, shattering the vile artifact. Its destruction marked a severed link to the demon god whose influence had nearly consumed his companion. Chloe landed nearby, graceful and composed, her staff steady in her grasp. Notifications blinked into view, signaling the mission's end. Students rescued, the demon defeated. Even the vanquished Chuberin begrudgingly acknowledged her power. Leo allowed himself a brief smile, inwardly admiring her achievement. Crafting such a vast field of magic was something even he, in a past life, had struggled to execute. She approached him, relief in her eyes but tinged with anxiety. A faint blush colored her cheeks as she confessed her fear of punishment for using the forbidden grimoire. Leo's smile widened, confident and reassuring. He dismissed her fears, declaring that someone destined for greatness, someone like her, would not be expelled for a necessary choice. Their reunion was interrupted by Alia and Dina, who rushed over with radiant smiles. Behind them, Tayad supported the injured Bilak. Alia gushed praise for Leo and Chloe's heroic efforts. Chloe, overwhelmed, insisted the others had been equally vital to their success. Alia, smiling warmly, handed Chloe her staff. As Chloe gratefully accepted it, Dina presented Leo's sword, politely offering it back. He nodded in silent thanks, the blue pendant from their allies catching the light on his wrist. The scene shifted, a dark tree under moonlight. Distant shouts rang out as rescuers called for survivors. A young man, breathless and panicked, called out for Alia. It was a younger Professor Albie, his face drenched in sweat. A tiny figure, Alia herself as a child, appeared, surprised to see her older brother. Chloe remarked that he looked their age. Leo explained the vision came from 30 years in the past. Young Albie rushed to his sister, who cheerfully reassured him. She mentioned meeting someone who looked like him, but before she could introduce him, Chloe and Leo already vanished. The simulated world around them cracked and splintered like glass. Chloe warned him, the reality was collapsing. Before everything faded, a glowing card appeared before Leo, labeled as a strategy reward. Leo awoke in an unfamiliar infirmary bed. Sunlight streamed through large windows. As he stirred, a familiar voice asked if he had awakened. Professor Albie, sharp in a tailored suit and dark sunglasses, stood beside the bed, offering his gratitude for Leo's bravery. He also asked Leo to convey his thanks to Chloe. Across the room, Chloe lay asleep, her breathing calm. As Albie turned to leave, Headmaster Callion appeared, blocking his path. His face was serious as he entered and gently instructed Leo to remain resting. Taking a seat beside him, the headmaster asked about the mission, particularly the connection between the dungeon and the forbidden grimoire. Leo was taken aback. He questioned how the headmaster knew. Callion explained that both Chloe's book and Sen Lu's catalyst originated from the same illicit source. He theorized the grimoire was a demon god's tool. Leo confirmed this, identifying it as a shard of Erebus, dangerous to mortals. He offered to recount the full story, beginning with their entry into the simulated hero world. Flashbacks followed, Chloe's descent into madness under the book's influence, red eyes gleaming. Back in the present, Callion asked if the tool had impacted the dungeon. Leo explained that the realm stabilized after the book's destruction. The headmaster sat in thought, understanding slowly dawning. Chloe suddenly awoke with a gasp. Kalyan gently urged her to relax. Irena entered, carrying a bundle. She revealed the staff and pendant, asking about their origins. Chloe clutched her staff, while the headmaster studied it gravely. He noted that such a reward should not exist. Leo silently realized Chloe had not received a similar rule-breaking artifact. When asked, Leo stated the pendant was his strategy reward. Both Kalyan and Chloe reacted with shock. Kalyan asked how such a thing could be possible. Leo cautiously suggested an anomaly had occurred when the hero world turned into a dungeon. Internally, he chose to keep deeper truths to himself. Kalyan pondered aloud why Leo alone received these extraordinary rewards. Chloe, defending him, suggested it might relate to contribution levels. The headmaster accepted the idea, murmuring thoughtfully. He decided to investigate quietly and requested the artifacts for examination. Irena collected them with care. Before leaving, the headmaster issued a firm warning. The demon god's tools must remain secret. Chloe, flustered, asked why such secrecy was necessary. Kalyan, his face shadowed, warned that their enemies might already be within the academy. Then, softening, he thanked them for enduring their ordeal and urged them to rest. After they departed, silence returned. Chloe turned to Leo, blushing faintly. Hands clasped, she looked down shyly and spoke his name. Her voice trembled as she admitted there was something important she needed to finally say. Leo looked at her, eyes widening at the sudden seriousness in her tone. Chloe inhaled deeply. Her cheeks flushed as she prepared to voice her feelings. The moment teetered on the edge of vulnerability when the door burst open. Chelsea, Thomas, and Celia barged in, their voices loud with celebration upon discovering that Leo was awake, completely derailing the intimate scene. Headmaster Kalyan made a brief reappearance, his smile warm as he greeted the lively group of students. The hero candidates stood in mixed states of delight and nervousness. With a beaming expression, the headmaster announced a celebratory party scheduled for the following evening, suggesting those without formal attire visit Lumerian City. His parting words were a fond comment on the boundless energy of youth. Later, the infirmary returned to quiet. Leo and Chloe exchanged glances amidst the residual tension and unsaid words. Chloe quietly repeated the word party, letting the news settle into the moment's silence. The scene shifted dramatically to a grand ballroom bathed in golden light. A booming voice welcomed attendees to the midterm survivors celebration. A gleaming white shoe touched the polished floor as Runia Tess, microphone in hand, announced the first group of student heroes making their entrance. Thomas and Tade entered in formal attire. Thomas claimed the event was their well-earned reward while Tade joked about the ease of life at Lumerian Academy. Amid the elegant surroundings, students in refined clothing gathered around buffet tables, enjoying food and conversation under radiant chandeliers. Thomas and Tade were already enthusiastically indulging when Thomas noted their class's absence. Tade quipped that Lumerian didn't tolerate tardy heroes. Suddenly, Runia Tess proclaimed the arrival of another pair of heroes. Liana, radiant in a golden yellow gown, entered beside Nella, dressed in silver white. The crowd reacted with surprise and admiration. Thomas and Tade were visibly shocked, even spitting out food in their astonishment. Liana teased them as they passed, clearly amused. Building suspense again, Runia Tess introduced the pride of the Rodran Empire. Abad and Chelsea Llewellyn entered with noble poise, clad in dark blue and silver. Murmurs swept through the crowd. Nella noted Chelsea's significant status. Then, Runia Tess turned the spotlight on a couple officially attending together. Leo stepped in wearing a sharp white jacket, alongside Celia Zerdinger in a bold red dress. Celia silently celebrated their coordinated appearance. From their table, Liana and Nella gasped. Nella loudly identified Leo as the class president, while Liana echoed the title in disbelief. Cheers erupted, Thomas and Nella praising their leader. Professor Arshan took the stage with a cheerful greeting, asking the crowd if they were enjoying the festivities. Thomas called out that they were having immense fun, though the enthusiasm may have been slightly forced. Two students nearby laughed heartily, one silently pleading for help as Arshan's energy intensified. Delighted by the response, Arshan declared it time to reveal the midterm exam results. The party's mood froze at Leo's table. Thomas slumped dramatically, while Tade looked regretfully toward his past. Leo remained composed. Arshan, now holding the mic, acknowledged the anxiety in the room and explained that only the top 3 students from each department would be announced tonight, with full results released by professors the next day. Professor Alendu took the stage. Liana swooned, whispering about the famed Night of the Frozen Sea. Alendu commended the students' efforts and announced the night department's top students. A hologram displayed Celia Zerdinger, Duran Moira, and Chen Shaw. Celia, though named first, looked pensive, her gaze drifting to Leo, who showed no reaction. Next, Professor Len Horace revealed the magic department's top students: Abad, Chelsea, and Emio. Chelsea turned to Leo in confusion, asking why his name hadn't appeared. Leo simply smiled, brushing off the question. Thomas noted another absence: Chloe's. Celia glanced toward her, realizing both top students were omitted. Chloe smiled faintly, betraying no disappointment. Len remembered the incident involving the magic tome, which led to her investigation. Despite her promise in magic, the controversy likely affected her standing. Suddenly, Professor Sejin stood, dramatically declaring Chloe the true number one in magic studies. Professor Edmund sighed while Len smirked at the familiar outburst. Celia placed a comforting hand on Chloe's shoulder, who blushed at the gesture. Then, Professor Yura took the stage to announce the summoning class results. The top names were Warraden, Eliza, and Jordan Lawson. Celia scanned the room again, increasingly unsettled by Leo's continued absence from every list. Abad noticed as well, arms crossed in contemplation. Arshan, now back on stage, excitedly revealed the final and most anticipated result: the overall top scorer and student representative. Faces tensed in suspense. With dramatic flair, Arshan announced the top student: Leo Plove. Leo looked up calmly. Cheers erupted from Thomas and Chelsea. Confused applause followed, silenced quickly by a sharp voice from the audience. Emio, third in magic, demanded an explanation, questioning how someone who didn't rank in any department could be top overall. Leo crossed his arms, his smirk subtle. The crowd echoed the objection. Arshan floundered, stammering under pressure. Her face darkened in panic. Then, her demeanor shifted. Eyes glowing white, she transformed into the formidable Granny. With righteous fury, she yelled at the crowd, insisting they pay attention to her one-time explanation. She explained that dual-class students like Leo were excluded from departmental ranks due to their hybrid nature. She cited Liana as an example. Dual-class students couldn't be fairly compared within a single department. Then she delivered the critical point. Leo had scored highest overall in the combined practical exam, covering hero and combat studies. Emio tried to argue, claiming others had also performed well, but Arshan shut her down, revealing that Leo defeated the demon Chubaran during the Hero's Realm mission. Shock rippled through the crowd. Leo remained silent, his red eyes focused. Liana and Thomas started, stunned. Liana asked if Leo had truly defeated Chubaran, and Thomas added if he had done so with only Chloe. Leo closed his eyes, arms crossed, saying nothing. On stage, the fiery persona faded. Arshan, now drained, tried to continue, but Professor Sejin stepped in, declaring the explanation sufficient. He ended the ceremony and urged everyone to resume the party. At the professor's table, Yura casually addressed Len, asking what might have happened had dual-class scores been included. Len answered seriously, saying it would have caused chaos, especially in the magic department. Yura was startled, questioning who the real top magic student was. Len confirmed it was Leo. Professor Alendu overheard and was equally shocked. He guessed the same must apply to summoning. Len avoided his gaze. Alendu declared Leo must be first everywhere, marveling that his ambition had been realized. Len stated he planned to guide Leo's magical path. Yura objected instantly, arguing that Leo's summoning talent was rarer. Alendu sighed as they bickered, asserting Leo looked best with a sword. As their argument intensified, associate professors Carlo and Anna watched the spectacle, visibly weary. The next day, Thomas lay face down on his desk, groaning. Chelsea, observing him, remarked dryly that he was the first person she knew to get hungover from orange juice. Professor Harlan Edmund enters, carrying a scroll. He walks to the front of the classroom and calls for quiet, silencing the morning chatter among the students effectively. Professor Edmund stands before the class with a map. He announces he has details regarding the school trip, reminding everyone their destination is the distant Elven territory. Liana and Tade buzz with excitement. Liana confirms they know, adding she heard classes can choose locations. Tade mentions potential spots like the Duan Forest or a fruit-filled region. Professor Harlan Edmund's finger decisively taps a specific northern location on the large wall map, indicating the chosen destination for their class school field trip was El Salvaquia. Turning back to the now quiet class, Professor Harlan Edmund reveals their assigned destination within the Elven territory, the northern region known specifically as El Salvaquia. Thomas, Liana, and Tade freeze, their expressions instantly shifting to utter despair. A note explains that El Salvaquia is a small, remote, northern country known for its year-round cold climate. Liana complains loudly about visiting such a remote backwater. Tate agrees it feels wrong. However, Professor Harlan Edmund deflects by telling them to blame their class president, Leo, who made the choice. Liana turns shocked towards Leo, questioning the class president's decision. Leo sits calmly, arms crossed confidently. Thomas asks Leo directly for his reasoning behind the unpopular choice. Leo cheerfully advises his classmates. He points out it would be wise to purchase any necessary supplies like money pouches and bags here in Lumarine City beforehand. Liana realizes she'll need warm gear for the cold climate, deciding to buy gloves first. Chelsea enthusiastically agrees adding a proper winter coat is definitely essential, too. Leo sits thoughtfully, considering their destination, El Salvaquia. He inwardly muses that while seemingly unimportant to humans, this remote land holds significance as a sanctuary for fairies. A vivid image of the smiley fairy king, siloed, in a lush green sanctuary, surfaces in Leo's memory. Later that day, Leo and Nella stood near the grand fountain in Lumarine City Square, poised to begin gathering supplies for their upcoming school trip. Leo delegated the responsibilities with efficiency. He would handle food and general gear, while Nella would secure the potions. She nodded in agreement and they went separate ways. Leo visited a local butcher, signaling with 4 fingers to indicate the quantity of meat needed. After finalizing the purchase, he exited another shop with a polite wave, likely having secured additional gear. Walking alone along a sunlit boulevard, Leo took in a deep breath, visibly relaxed after completing his tasks. His contentment was brief. Without warning, his senses sharpened. Eyes narrowed, he stopped abruptly, sensing something wrong nearby. His attention shifted to a narrow alleyway, its sign reading 13th Street. Recognition flashed in his eyes. This was 13th Street in the Karazu district, a place known for danger. Alert and focused, Leo approached a building marked Lutek, the shop where Senlu and Chloe had acquired dangerous magical artifacts. He placed his bag on the front steps and pushed the door open. Inside, the shop was cloaked in dust, cobwebs, and disarray. Amid the debris sat a single upright teddy bear, oddly untouched. Leo's eyes narrowed. Why is a teddy bear here, of all places? Drawing his sword, he stood alert. The bear's button eyes suddenly glowed red. Dark magic surged. Leo recognized the signs, likely a cognitive decline curse, still active. In a burst of dark energy, the teddy bear contorted into a massive, shadowy demon. Leo braced himself, sword in hand. The demon, covered in red eyes, launched a beam of destructive energy. Leo dodged, barely avoiding the blast. He immediately understood, this was no ordinary demon. Its towering form laughed, bragging about its curses. The voice struck Leo as disturbingly familiar. His eyes widened with recognition. It was Silatuna, or rather, a clone of her. Queen of demon beasts, once a commander of unimaginable power. This malformed entity wasn't her real body, Leo concluded, but a proxy. Silatuna's clone sneered, acknowledging Leo's hybrid aura and talents with reluctant respect. It lunged forward with terrifying speed. A claw slammed down, sending Leo skidding across the floor. Outmatched, he scrambled for a way to escape. Dripping dark slime, Silatuna loomed over him, thanking him for the meal she was about to consume. Her grotesque maw opened. Suddenly, golden light exploded through the roof. Outside, Professor Albie Zarin stood, sunglasses gleaming. He raised a hand and invoked the Spear of Light. A blinding spear descended, impaling the demon clone. It howled in agony as the holy energy consumed it. Professor Albie stepped forward, revealing himself as the feared sorcerer known as the Mage of the Evil Eye. Silatuna's clone thrashed, howling hate at the professor's golden eyes. She cursed them, vowing revenge. Albie calmly adjusted his glasses, stating he had no interest in leftovers. With a single command, he released another spear of pure light. It struck the demon, obliterating it in an explosion of radiant power. Leo stood firm. He recognized Albie not just as a mage, but as the Tartarus slaughterer, rumored to have joined Lumarine for the right to hunt demons. Albie turned to Leo, offering thanks and calling him a hero of the current era. He asked for an explanation. Leo pointed to the cursed teddy bear, explaining its effects. Albie took the toy with a grim look, vowing that Lumarine's investigation team would face consequences for missing such a threat. He chose not to punish Leo for his unauthorized actions, acknowledging the immediate danger. Albie then offered future support, citing Leo's past help to his sister Alia during the Chad incident. Leo, surprised by the connection, quietly absorbed the offer. He retrieved his bag and stepped outside. The crest of House Duran was displayed with others, a reminder of Lumerian Academy's great founding families. A spark lit in Leo's eyes. Albie's influence might grant access to the forbidden library. Just then, Nella appeared, cheerful and waving. She had completed her shopping. Spotting residual energy on Leo's arm, she quickly healed him. Leo nodded in thanks, lost in thought. Through his encounter with the cursed toy, Leo confirmed Silatuna's hand in Chloe obtaining the Black Grimoire. A week passed. A shimmering blue portal awaited on the academy grounds. Students gathered, excitement in the air. Leo waited near the portal. Nella and Liana reaffirmed their pact. Thomas yawned, and Celia approached Leo, questioning his logic in choosing El Salvaquia, a freezing destination. She waved goodbye, shivering, and Leo silently wished her safety. Leo turned to Class 5, rallying them, and Chelsea cheered. Thomas groaned dramatically about the cold, but with resolve, Leo led them through the portal. They arrived instantly in a snow-covered land. In Siren Academy, the Elf Hero Academy, 2 elite elf students mocked a smaller peer, sneering at his common heritage and clothing. Their victim lowered his head, flushed with shame. A sharp footstep interrupted. Runia El Rundoa, a fierce red-haired elf and Year 1 representative, scolded the bullies. When one of them questioned if she truly accepted a half-blood, Runia's eyes blazed. She called their behavior repulsive, suggesting they donate their own clothes if the boys offended them so deeply. Her fury silenced them. The snow drifted quietly as Runia stood firm, unflinching. The bullies backed off. In the crisp, hostile air of El Salvaquia, a new chapter of the journey began. The female elf nervously reminds Miss Runia to mind her language, given her prominent family status and position within the academy. Runia stands defiantly, questioning their shame in ganging up 2 against 1. She boldly challenges them to fight her right now if they disagree. Flames seem to flicker around the enraged Runia. Thoroughly intimidated, the bullies quickly retreat, muttering insults about her being crazy as they wisely flee the confrontation. Once the bullies are gone, Runia's anger cools slightly. She turns to the half-elf, asking kindly why he wears such poor clothes while removing her scarf. The half-elf, Luca Eneris, smiles with gratitude. He explains his clothes were stolen, gratefully accepting the warm scarf Runia offers against the biting elven cold. Runia immediately shivers without her scarf, sneezing and blaming the bullies. Lucas looks worried, insisting she take back the scarf due to the freezing weather. Run dismisses his concern with a slightly smug knowing smile, telling him not to worry. Luca looks perplexed by her unexpectedly cheerful and mysterious reaction, noting her bright mood. Luca asks Runia the reason for her happiness today. She grins widely, sharing wonderful news. Her awaited familiar has finally hatched. Luca beams, genuinely thrilled for her good fortune. He claps his hands together, offering heartfelt congratulations on the successful hatching of her destined familiar spirit. Runia smiled warmly, grateful for the kind words, but she explained that she needed to leave. Her excitement was evident. She was finally going to meet her magical companion. Moments later, she burst into an office, calling for her father. Her voice was filled with anticipation as she sought confirmation. Had her familiar truly been born? Elon Rundoa, her father and teacher at the academy, met her with a smile. He gently reminded her to use his title while on the academy premises. Then he confirmed the wonderful news. Purina's child, her familiar, had indeed hatched. Runia's eyes sparkled with joy, her expression pure and radiant. Leaning over the desk, she expressed her excitement and asked when she would get to meet it, but Elon's smile faded, replaced by a grave expression. He delivered news that shattered her happiness. The familiar had already formed a bond with someone else. Runia froze in disbelief, her ears drooping. Elon tried to explain, beginning with a message from Purina, but she exploded with fury. Her hand slammed the desk, demanding to know who had stolen what was rightfully hers. The scene shifted to the snowy arrival portal. Leo and his classmates stood near the inactive structure as someone called his name. Thomas complained loudly about the cold, while Tade shivered beside him. Leo tolerated the chill, deeming it a worthwhile cost. Professor Edmund appeared, wrapped absurdly in a pink blanket, and advised them to stay calm in El Salvaquia's harsh weather. Edmund announced their location, Belkia, the capital. He asked about its history, prompting Chelsea to respond eagerly while Thomas sneezed loudly. Chelsea explained that Belkia was named after the fairy knight Belkia Ersar, a disciple of Nebula's founder Lena. Leo mentally corrected her. He, Luna, and Aaron had co-founded Belkia long ago. A subtle smile touched his lips at the thought of how the once arrogant Belkia was now a celebrated figure. Professor Edmund confirmed Chelsea's version matched official records. He added that Belkia's descendants, the Ersar family, currently governed the region. From within the snowstorm, shadowed figures began approaching. Edmund and a startled Thomas noticed them. As they drew closer, their forms became clearer. Thomas nervously asked if they might be bandits. Edmund replied that unpleasant people existed everywhere. The lead figure called out warmly to Edmund, asking how he had been since their last meeting. The visitors came into full view, elegant elves stepping confidently through the snow. At their front was a tall elf with long silver hair and striking blue eyes. He smiled confidently, surrounded by well-dressed companions. Liana and two other girls gasped, blushing at the sight of him.